This is a true story. The reconstructions are based on original cockpit voice recordings and eyewitness accounts.
No family wants to lose a loved one, daughter, son. None of us think it's going to happen to our family. We read about these horrible crashes and we think, thank God, you know, and chances are it won't happen to us. The odds are in our favor.
You got it? What are you doing? It just got worse, okay?
In January 2000, an Air Alaska jet with 88 passengers and crew suffered a catastrophic failure that tore it from the sky. A shocking chain of negligence and error had led to disaster. When a whistleblower mechanic from the airline tried to sound the alarm about faulty maintenance procedures, he was suspended from his job. The investigation exposes deeply worrying shortcomings in maintenance and regulation that afflict the airline industry. It shows how a series of devastating errors combine to produce a tragic accident, one that could happen again.
Release it.
Puerto Vallarta is a popular holiday resort on the Mexican Pacific coast, one of several Mexican destinations served by Alaska Airlines. Colleen Worley went there to celebrate a family birthday. The 34-year-old was a keen traveler who spoke Spanish well and had visited Mexico many times. Colleen and the other holidaymakers returning from Puerto Vallarta settle in for the 4-hour flight to San Francisco. In the warm afterglow of their holidays, they're looking to the future. Colleen and her fiancé Monty were planning to start a family later that year. The pilots on Flight 261 are very experienced. Both Captain Ted Thompson and First Officer Bill Tansky have thousands of hours flying MD-80s. They know the plane well. The MD-83 is one of a successful group of rear-engined low-wing planes. Originally launched in 1980, over 1,100 were delivered worldwide.
Flaps? Check, confirmed. Spoilers? Check, armed.
But on the 31st of January 2000, as they prepared Flight 261, Thompson and Tansky had no idea that deep in the plane's tail lay a critical weakness. Colleen Worley and her fiancé, Monty, were planning their forthcoming wedding.
They had announced their engagement at Christmas time, and so it was a time for everybody to sort of congratulate them, and so we decided we'd have a party for the family.
Abby Miller Bush had visited Mexico with her husband Ryan and their friends to celebrate her new job at Microsoft.
It's hard to describe how joyful a girl she was. She was well known for that care that she had in her, a trait that you can't put a value on.
Dean and I had been there a lot together, and it was the first time that he went without me. Dean taught me how to play. He was always up. He told jokes a lot. People described him kind of as a puppy dog.
Alaska Airlines was a successful carrier with routes up and down the west coast of America and into Mexico. Flight 261 left Puerto Vallarta as a routine flight with no hint of the danger to come. The devastating failure that would bring catastrophe to Flight 261 did not come out of the blue. In fact, it was the culmination of a chain of mistakes that began years earlier. Maintenance procedures at the company had come under scrutiny 2 years earlier when a whistleblower set off an investigation by the Federal Aviation Administration. But the day Flight 261 left Puerto Vallarta, the investigation was still underway and the whistleblower suspended from his work. Shortly after takeoff, Captain Thompson and First Officer Tansky get the first sign of trouble. The horizontal stabilizer on the tailplane won't move. The pilots carry out a standard checklist to try and free it.
Stabilizer trim switch.
Normal.
Circuit breakers. Reset if tripped.
D9, D10, D11, okay.
The stabilizer on the MD-83 is the 40-foot wide horizontal surface at the front of the tail. It's like another wing. Together with the elevators at the rear of the tail, the stabilizer is used to adjust the angle of the plane in flight. The stabilizer was jammed. Thompson and Tansky assumed there was a fault in the electric motors that move it up and down. They believed they could fix the problem. They had no idea they were in great danger.
What they dealt with was something that really snuck up on them. It was not supposed to be a big deal. If it had been, they would have turned around and gone back in to the Mexican airfield they came out of. But they were led down this road of accepting this problem as a small problem, so it's perfectly all right to troubleshoot it.
The pilots repeatedly try the two switches that operate the stabilizer. The primary motor activated by the switch on the control stick known as the pickle switch, and the sliding suitcase handles on the central console.
Either system operative.
No.
Both systems inoperative. Consider stab jam. Do not use autopilot.
Check.
The jammed stabilizer is pushing the aircraft down towards the ground. At 28,500 feet, the pilots switch off the autopilot and fly the plane manually. They have to pull back hard on the control column to lift the nose of the plane up. This requires considerable effort. The plane climbs for the next 7 minutes to its cruising altitude of 32,000 feet. As they fly up the coast, the pilots contact Alaska Maintenance Department for assistance.
Maintenance, we need to know if any faults like this got reported recently for this aircraft.
Whether there are any switches that we might not be aware of that could get those motors turning again.
Roger 261. I
Have verified no history on your aircraft in the past 30 days.
Yeah, we didn't see anything in the logbook. Why don't you move your seat forward? I'll check this pedestal back there. Beyond that, I don't think there's anything we haven't checked.
I use the example of the average layman, I think, can understand. If you try to start your car and it doesn't crank, you try jiggling the key in the socket and then try it again. And I think that the crew was probably understandably going through a lot of these, well, maybe it'll work now, or let's try this, let's try that.
The pilots want to divert to Los Angeles, but Alaska Airlines dispatch, coordinating the movements of the company's planes, is worried this will upset the busy schedule.
261 dispatch, if you want to land at LA, of course, for safety reasons, we will do that.
Tell you though, if we land in LA, we're looking at probably an hour and a half. We got a major flow program going right now.
Well, you really put me in a spot up here. I don't want to hear that the flow is the reason you're calling.
Because I'm concerned about overflying suitable airports.
Well, we want to do what's safe, so if that's what you feel is safe, just want to make sure you have all the info.
We might ask if they have a ground school instructor available. We could discuss it with him, and a simulator instructor.
Dispatch 261, we're wondering if we can get some support out of the instructors up there.
Thompson and Tansky now ask for a pilot instructor who might know the solution to their unusual problem.
Stand by.
As they wait for a reply, their frustration begins to show.
Just drives me nuts, you know? Not that I want to go on about it, but it just blows me away. They think we're going to land, they're going to fix it. Now they're worried about the flow. Well, I'm sorry. Just...
So they're putting pressure on you.
Well, no. Yeah.
The pilots need to think about what will happen when they descend for landing. How will the plane behave? Will they be able to control it? But several minutes after requesting help from the ground, they're getting no advice. As Flight 261 approached Los Angeles off the coast, the problems on board were about to get far worse. The pilots on the crippled Air Alaska Flight 261 are flying manually at 32,000 feet in a plane that has a jammed stabilizer that is forcing the plane's nose down. The pilots have another go at freeing up the jammed stabilizer. They switch on both the electric motors that control it.
This will click it off.
Holy! You got it down. What are you doing there? It clicked off.
From 31,000 feet, Flight 261 plunges down for over a minute. The crew battle for control.
It just got worse, okay? You're stalled.
At first, they pull back on the control columns to fight the dive. But then the pilots push the aircraft's nose down into the dive to regain control. It's a risky maneuver, pushing the plane's speed to 350 miles an hour.
You gotta release it. You gotta release it.
The pilots slowly bring the plane out of its dive and back under control.
Let's get speed brakes. Give me high pressure pumps.
Okay.
Help me back. Help me back.
Okay.
Center Alaska 261. We're in a dive here.
I've lost control. Vertical pitch.
Alaska 261, say again, sir.
Yeah, we're out of 26,000 feet.
We are in a vertical dive. Not a dive yet, but we have lost vertical control of our airplane. Just help me. Once we get the speed slow, maybe we'll be okay.
Maintaining level flight is difficult. The jammed stabilizer keeps pushing the nose of the plane down.
We're at 23.7. Request. Yeah, we got it under control here.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Okay.
To counteract the downward force of the stabilizer, the pilots use the elevators, movable panels at the back of the tail, linked by cable to the control column. The pilots pull with all their might. The fate of the plane hangs on the strength of their arms. In the cabin, frightened passengers try to recover from the terrifying plunge. They have no idea what might happen next. Holiday memories are replaced by the fear of dying.
Dean was one of these people who would talk to whoever was around him. I'm absolutely certain that he was talking to the person that was sitting next to him on the plane. I'm sure that they had a connection.
Colleen was very unique from my other kids, and she loved to travel. She was a beautiful girl.
But here was a 25-year-old who was like she had her own private rocket ship. She was really going places.
In the cockpit, the pilots struggle to control the plane's speed so they can land.
They've got a handful of airplane. They get her stabilized, and they're now in a situation where they make the decision properly to go in on an emergency landing to Los Angeles International. And they have to be able to slow the airplane up, so you've got to experiment a little bit.
Let's take the speed brakes off.
No, leave them there. It seems to be helping. Damn. Okay, it really wants to pitch down.
Okay.
Don't mess with that.
I agree with you.
With the plane under temporary control, the crew make the fateful decision to do more troubleshooting. They need a block of clear space around the aircraft in case they lose control again. They contact air traffic control.
Alaska 261, say your conditions.
261, we're at
24,000 feet, kind of stabilized. We're slowing down here, and we're going to do a little troubleshooting.
Can you give me a block altitude between 20 and 25?
Alaska 261, maintain block altitude flight level 200 through flight level 250.
The pilots know they now have clear airspace above and below the plane. They try to figure out their next move.
You got the airplane. Let me just try it.
Okay.
How hard is it?
I don't know. My adrenaline's going. It was really rough back there for a while.
Yeah, it is. Whatever we did is no good. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, it went to full nose down.
It's worse than it was before?
Yeah, we're in much worse shape now.
The crew know this is no mere electrical problem. From what they've experienced, they assume the stabilizer is now jammed.
I think it's at the stop, full stop, and I'm thinking, can it get any worse? But it probably can. But let's slow it. Let's get down to 200 knots and see what happens.
The crisis is getting worse. Uncertain how the plane will react if they try to slow it down, the pilots must still pull on the elevators to maintain level flight. Captain Thompson once again tries to get help from maintenance.
Maintenance, 261, are you on?
Yeah, 261, this is maintenance.
Okay, we did both the pickle switch and the suitcase handles, and it ran away. It ran away full nose, trimmed down.
Oh, it ran away trimmed down?
Okay, and now we're in a damn pinch, and we're worse than we were before.
You getting full nose trimmed down, but you don't get
no nose trim up, is that correct?
That's affirmed. We went to full nose down, and I'm afraid to try it again to see if it would go in the other direction.
Okay, well, your discretion. If you want to try it, that's okay with me.
If not, that's fine. See you at the gate.
As important as it is to have that ground contact with people with maintenance manuals and experience on the ground and the ability to call up the manufacturer, it's not always going to give you a magic answer. The crew had already gone through every logic tree they possibly could think of.
Maintenance clearly do not appreciate the gravity of the situation. This is the last the crew will hear from them. No one can help the pilots now, as they struggle with the plane's faulty stabilizer. Ever professional, however, they try to put the passengers at ease.
Folks, we have had a flight control problem up front here.
We're working it. That's Los Angeles off to the right there, and that's where we're intended to go. We're pretty busy up here working this situation. I don't anticipate any big problems once we get a couple of subsystems on the line.
But we will be going into LAX, and I anticipate us parking there in about 20 to 30 minutes.
In fact, they will never make it to Los Angeles. A full-blown disaster is about to unfold. After the terrifying 8,000 feet plunge downwards, Alaska 261 has now leveled out.
LA, Alaska 261, we're with you. We're at 22.5. We have a jam stabilizer, and we're maintaining altitude with difficulty. But we can maintain altitude, we think, and our intention is to land at Los Angeles.
The pilots request to be routed out over the Pacific Ocean.
Center, Alaska 261, I need to get down about 10, change my configurations to make sure I can control the jet, and I'd like to do that over the bay here, if I may.
If the worst happens, they don't want to kill people on the ground as well as in the plane.
There are a lot of lives saved that people maybe don't realize by the fact that this aircrew said, let's stay out over the water until we've got this thing completely under control.
As they maneuver over the ocean, the crew again ask air traffic control for clear space around the plane.
Alaska 261, fly a heading of 280 and descend and maintain 17,000.
280 and 17,000, Alaska 261. And we're generally needing a block altitude.
Alaska 261, roger.
I need everything picked up and everybody strapped down.
Because I'm gonna unload the aircraft and see if we can regain control that way.
The pilots concentrate on trying to fix the plane.
I'm test flying now.
How's it feel?
It's wanting to pitch over more.
Really?
Yep.
Try flaps, 15, 11?
Let's go to 11.
Okay, get some power on.
I'm at 250 knots.
Real hard?
Well, actually, it's pretty stable right here, see, but we got to get it down to 180.
The crew try to slow the aircraft down to landing speed without losing control, but every move they make could have fatal consequences.
Okay, bring the flaps and the slats back up for me.
Slats too?
Yeah.
Treading a knife edge of control, the pilots are still trying to free up the stabilizer.
What I want to do is get the nose up, and then let the nose fall through, and see if we can stab it when it's unloaded.
The only hope for the passengers is that the pilot's skill and experience can get the plane to Los Angeles Airport.
It's on the stop now, it's on the stop.
Not according to this, it's not.
As one effort after another fails, the crew wonder if the stabilizer is damaged.
The trim might be, and then it might be if something's popped back there.
Yeah.
It might be mechanical damage too. I think if it's controllable, we ought to just try and land it.
Think so? Okay, let's head for LA.
But just as they prepare the plane to land in Los Angeles, something in the tail suddenly breaks.
Did you feel that?
Yep. Okay, give me slats. This is a bitch.
Is it?
Yeah.
The plane dives straight down from 18,000 feet. To avoid collisions, Los Angeles Control has warned the pilots of nearby planes that Alaska 261 is in difficulty. These pilots now report back to the tower.
That plane has just started to do a big, huge plunge.
Yep.
Yes, sir. He is definitely in a nose down position, descending quite rapidly. Definitely out of control. Plane's inverted, sir. Okay. Yeah, he's inverted.
The pilots can barely reach the controls. The plane is now upside down, but they believe they might be able to roll it out of the dive.
Mayday! Push and roll! Push and roll! Kick, damn it! Push! 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 Push the blue side up!
They tried to fly the airplane even upside down. They never for a moment believed that they could not find a way to control this airplane.
Push! I'm pushing! Okay, let's kick rudder! Left rudder! Left rudder! Can't reach it! Okay. Right rudder! Right rudder!
Plane was being knocked from side to side. It turned upside down. It was spinning. Persons were being thrown against the walls of the plane, falling out of their seats, and the cockpit voice recorder screaming. Unbelievable, horrible last few minutes of their lives.
Are we flying? We're flying! We're flying! Tell them what we're doing. Let me just... damn. At least upside down, we're flying. Yeah.
And it was so violently upside down that the pilots were hanging from their shoulder straps. Passengers don't have shoulder straps.
Here we go.
And he just hit the water. Yes, sir. He hit the water. He's down.
After a terrifying 60-second dive, Flight 261 hit the Pacific Ocean at over 250 miles an hour. Rescue helicopters were soon at the crash site, but there were no survivors. The plane had broken up on impact. 88 passengers and crew, including 3 young children, died instantly. Fred Miller lost his daughter Abby and her husband Ryan.
These people suffered on the way down. This was not a pretty way to die. One witness who I met, a jogger on the beach down at Port Hueneme, he said, "You look like you lost somebody." And I said, "I did, my daughter." He said, "You know, I saw the plane go down." He said the plane was inverted and twisting and flipping, and then he said it spun at times, almost like a top. And he said, to think people, somebody who has a life to live is in there, dying. He says it's one of the most horrifying memories I'll ever have.
Susan De Silva lost her husband, Dean.
I know that they went through a horrible, horrible experience. This was a violent end these people suffered. There were no bodies that were intact or even close to intact. And they were conscious for a long time before it all came apart.
Colleen Worley died along with her fiancé, Monty.
As a mother, keep waiting for your child to come home. And Colleen had traveled so much in her life that it was unusual not to have her just walk in the door. All this time you're thinking something caused this, something made this happen, and I want to find out who's responsible for this.
The investigation into Flight 261 immediately got underway, but the wreckage lay 700 feet down, so National Transportation Board officials called on Navy submersibles to retrieve the debris from the seabed.
We set up a base of operations, and we had a remote operating vehicle with the side-scanning sonar, which they used to map the debris field and get an idea of how widely spread the wreckage was.
At the National Transportation Safety Board headquarters in Washington, the investigators' immediate concern was to find out what had brought the plane down. The first clues came from the cockpit voice recordings.
LA, Alaska 261, we're with you. We're at 22.5. We have a jam stabilizer, and we're maintaining altitude with difficulty.
We immediately suspected some problem in the tail of the airplane, which is where the controls are. Something was wrong back there, and that was the key piece of wreckage to look for.
The MD-83 that crashed was a revised version of the Douglas Corporation's popular DC-9, over 2,000 of which were delivered to airlines worldwide. The engines were at the rear, and the distinctive T-shaped tail was an essential element of the design.
In a big turbojet aircraft, one of the rather brilliant elements of the design is that since you're going to be loading passengers and cargo, you want to be able to have that aircraft loaded a little nose heavy or a little tail heavy. Well, in order to do that, you actually had to have that entire stabilizer moving. But the ones that are the most difficult to engineer are the T-tailed airplanes, where you have the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal sitting on top. And we call that stabilizer trim. And that is an essential element of what makes these aircraft so usable.
In the MD-83, a motorized jack screw in the tail moves the horizontal stabilizer up and down. As the stabilizer moves up, the nose of the plane moves down. As the stabilizer moves down, the nose moves up. But what role had the 2-foot jack screw played in the loss of Flight 261? The investigators were anxious to inspect it as soon as it was recovered from the sea bed.
The jack screw wasn't mated with the nut that it screws into. It was just by itself. And the nut was found in another piece of structure a few feet away from where the jack screw was. To have a screw separate itself from a nut with very thick threads surprised us. Secondly, we noticed that there was a curled piece of brass around the jack screw. And all of the threads that you can see here, these ridges, were gone. They had been stripped out. And the remnants of those were found coiled on the jack screw.
Once the thread had been stripped off the nut, the jack screw could no longer turn. The pilots could not have known the real nature of the problem.
The crew was confronted with a situation that had never occurred before. There is no failed jack screw procedure in the quick reference handbooks that they have available. There is no training for it.
When the jack screw jammed, the crew were unable to adjust the stabilizer.
We felt that it was due to the fact that these nut threads had worn away and it was just too hard for that jack screw under the power of the electric motor to turn. That gave the flight crew an indication that there was a problem.
The crew knew they had a problem in the tailplane, but they had no idea what. 2 motors controlled the jack screw. They tried each in turn, but the pilot's attempts to free the jam stabilizer inadvertently made their situation worse.
We're at 23.7. Request. Yeah, we got it under control here.
No, we don't.
Where they went wrong was that they wanted to try both the alternate and the primary trim motors at the same time.
When the pilots switched both the electric motors on, the jack screw moved, but the threads had given way, and the jack screw was now held only by a single retaining nut. From here on, the plane was doomed.
That end nut was never designed to hold the loads generated aerodynamically by the airplane.
Let's get speed brakes. Give me high pressure pumps.
Okay.
Now we know, in the glaring light of hindsight, now when we turn the situation around in time and look back, we can see that this aircrew and no aircrew should have ever been fooling with the trim and trying to run it back and forth.
The retaining nut grew weaker and weaker.
Then, finally, through the loads beating down on that nut, the nut finally failed.
Feel that?
Yep. Okay, give me slats.
The jack screw slid completely out of the Acme nut, allowing the horizontal stabilizer to move well beyond its aerodynamic limits.
This is a bitch.
Is it? Yeah.
The stabilizer forced the plane down. And now, completely out of control, it rolled over into its final dive.
Okay, let's keep rudder. Slip rudder. Rudder. I can't reach it.
This crew was working to recover the aircraft right down to the water. I mean, they did not give up the whole way down through the descent.
Here we go.
It was clear to the investigators that the failure of the jack screw was the only explanation for the plane's erratic flight path and final dive. But why had this happened? Why had the jack screw failed? The investigators began looking deeper and deeper into the condition of the faulty jack screw on Flight 261. What had caused it to fail?
There was no lubrication or visible grease on the working area of the screw. That was surprising and strange.
The discovery of no grease on the jack screw alarmed the investigators. They alerted the Federal Aviation Administration, who ordered an immediate check on all MD-80s in the USA. This led to a shocking discovery. At Alaska Airlines, in 6 of its fleet of 34 planes, the jack screw assembly needed to be replaced after failing new inspections.
No grease is the culprit. No grease or inadequate grease is the only thing that can give you that wear rate.
A simple lack of grease led to the failure of the jack screw and the loss of 88 lives. But why did this happen at Alaska Airlines? The investigators' attention now switched to the company's maintenance program. What emerged was deeply worrying.
We interviewed all the mechanics who had worked on these airplanes. We knew that they had been falsifying records or not doing the work they had indicated.
The mechanics at Alaska complained that they were pressured to keep the planes in the air, or that their recommendations were overruled by supervisors. Some alleged that records were altered to show work done that was not done. Alaska has long been one of America's most successful airlines, but in the early 1990s, the economic downturn hit the company hard. Its response was to slash costs to revive its fortunes. Pilots, maintenance workers, management and others had to make sacrifices. Jobs were lost, pay was cut, and every hour aircraft spent on the ground was seen as waste. 2 years of aggressive axe-wielding saw costs come down by $80 million. Profits leapt. It was a corporate triumph.
In Alaska's case, in the early 90s, this airline had to do an incredible job of reforming itself from a fairly high-cost carrier to a lower-cost carrier that could compete head-on with Southwest Airlines and with others. And they did it. They did it brilliantly. Nobody really believed that it could happen.
Alaska Airlines began flying the planes more intensively. It doubled the average daily use of its fleet. But keeping the planes in the air earning money put maintenance schedules under pressure. John Leotine was a former lead mechanic at Alaska Airlines' Oakland maintenance facility, where he worked for over 8 years. Leotine felt that the new pressures on maintenance put passengers' lives at risk. He was to pay dearly for expressing those concerns. We have used an actor to portray his experiences based on his sworn evidence to the NTSB. Leotine claimed that planes were pushed back into service too quickly. Sometimes, rather than wait for a replacement part or repair, supervisors pass planes fit for service, free to carry passengers up into the air. In October 1998, over 15 months before the crash, John Leontine became so worried that he did something that would change his life forever. He reported Alaska Airlines to the U.S. Department of Transportation, alleging violations in maintenance procedures.
There were very few voices at Alaska who had concerns about the maintenance. There should have been more, and there should have been people listening. John Leontine is a hero in my book.
In December 1999, over a year before the crash, the FAA and Department of Transportation officials moved on Alaska Airlines. The case was referred to federal prosecutors, and the FBI raided Alaska's maintenance facilities and seized thousands of records. The raid was the opening shot in a federal grand jury investigation that would last 3 years. No criminal charges were brought against the airline. Alaska officials denied that any unsafe planes were put into service or that passengers' lives were ever at risk. But the investigation revealed hundreds of violations of federal regulations. Alaska Airlines was fined. The FAA insisted on changes to the company's maintenance and safety procedures. The FAA also suspended 2 supervisors for falsifying records. Like other whistleblowers, John Leontine would pay heavily for his efforts to save lives. Alaska put him on paid leave from his job, losing him thousands of dollars in regular overtime earnings. Then in January 2000, John Leontine saw his worst nightmare come true. The kind of accident he had tried to prevent now took place just off the California coast. After the loss of Flight 261, Leontine went back to his private work records. Incredibly, he found he had a direct link to the crashed airliner. 2 years before, at the plane's last overhaul, he had ordered that the jack screw on this very aircraft be replaced. He then went off shift. When investigators examined the record, they found that Leontine's recommendation had been overruled by the next shift and the plane put back into service. It would be 2 years before the next overhaul, but time ran out. 4 months before the overhaul was due, Flight 261 crashed. Alaska Airlines labeled Leontine a disruptive influence. He sued the company for libel. Alaska settled, but Leontine could no longer work in the industry he loved.
I get calls almost every week of somebody saying, should I blow the whistle? And I always tell them, you need to know, you need to be prepared to find another line of work, because you will not work in the industry and you will not work in the government. In most cases, it's almost impossible to be a whistleblower and survive your career.
As the investigators continued their work into Flight 261, they made another disturbing discovery about the drive to cut costs at Alaska Airlines. To keep planes flying more intensively, Alaska had dramatically extended the intervals between service. This was significant. Because when a plane is designed, every part has a schedule listing when it is serviced and when it must be replaced.
You're supposed to go in and inspect every so many hours, and that's different on parts all over the planes. Some things you have to look at after every flight. Other things have to be inspected every 2 or 3 days.
In 1996, Alaska Airlines extended the intervals between MD-80 jack screw inspections by 400%. Before 1996, jack screws were inspected every 600 flight hours. Now there was over 2,500 hours between each service.
If you had 600 hours between inspection points and greasing points, we have no chance of ever having a metal-to-metal contact situation. But if you put that out to 2,000 hours or 2,500 hours, now what you do is eat into some of these protective stages, these barriers that we have towards catastrophic failure.
Investigations Division.
In its final report into the crash of Flight 261, the NTSB concluded that the extended service intervals for the jack screws on its MD-80s was a significant contributor to the crash.
With any of your supervisors up the chain in the engineering area.
I don't recall.
With carriers, doing anything to save a dime, maintenance, safety, took a back seat. And one of the shocking things about Alaska is that they were allowed to increase inspection intervals. And it was very shocking because that is the only way we have safety.
The extended maintenance intervals meant that the lack of grease on the jack screw went undiscovered. But now investigators also wondered if the failure of the jack screw assembly revealed a basic flaw in the plane's design. They found that the MD-80 broke one of the fundamental rules of aircraft design. It was not fail-safe.
The design philosophy that has made aviation so safe is that we should never ever have a situation in which one catastrophic failure of some component of the airplane causes us to lose the airplane. These backups to the backup, backing up the backups, is why we can get on an airplane with almost 100% assurance that we're going to get where we want to go safely.
There was no backup to the jack screw and its nut. Engineers never envisaged a situation on the MD-80 where the jack screw might fail. With inspections every 600 flight hours and replacement every 2,000 hours, the designers did not add an additional redundant backup system.
It was utterly laughable that they said it was a redundant system. There's one screw and there's one nut. That's all there is. It's not redundant.
The MD-80 continues to fly worldwide. Despite the revelation of this dangerous design flaw, the jack screw assembly has not been redesigned. Inspection intervals have been shortened, but airlines still rely on proper maintenance to prevent the same accident happening again.
Investigations Division.
In its final report, the National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the crash of Flight 261 was due to the lack of adequate greasing and the stretched service intervals. When coupled with the design of the jack screw, these failures led to a completely avoidable accident and the loss of 88 lives. Three years after the crash of Flight 261, the relatives and friends of the dead dedicated a permanent memorial at Port Hueneme, close to the crash site.
Janice Stokes.
I think the best thing and the only thing in our infinite inadequacy of making up for the loss from this life is to say something that we've been able to say on a lot of other accidents to other grieving families, and that is, those deaths will not be in vain. We will not let them be in vain. Every one of those lives will be made to count in terms of making sure that 3, 4, 5, or 10 other people do not die.
Miss Carol Carlson.
Colleen was different. She was adventurous, and there's nobody like that in our family. And I don't know, what we can do except to remember Colleen and to live our lives now a little bit better for her.
You know, when I was growing up, we didn't wear seatbelts. There weren't even seatbelts in cars. And now we know that we need to wear seatbelts. We didn't know that much about smoking cigarettes, and now we know that we can't smoke cigarettes. Well, there's a lot to learn about airline safety, too.
Ryan Bushy.
None of us are the same anymore. It's like walking into a giant storm, wave after wave forming up, coming in, because it never stops. Grief over the loss of a child is not something I wish on anybody. This plane went down because of neglect. It seems like such an unholy type of loss. What a hard way to die. So an airline can, you know, make more money.
A freight train is out of control.
Get on the phone. Tell them we got a runaway train.
7551 to West Colton.
Its brakes can't hold it as it rockets down a mountain.
Mayday, Mayday. We're doing 90 miles an hour. 9-0.
Now thousands of tons of steel and freight are heading straight for a small town.
We're gonna die on that curve.
An innocent mistake risks the lives of everyone on board and many more in the town below.
3,000? Here. We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. England Tower, Aero Peru 603. We are in an emergency.
San Bernardino, California, a quiet suburban town at the foot of the San Gabriel Mountains. It's a great place to raise a family, in between the emptiness of the Mojave Desert and the bustle of Los Angeles.
When we had problems in the neighborhood, we could go to one another, and it was a very nice neighborhood.
But in 1989, San Bernardino is rocked by two disasters. 6 people are killed, 18 houses are completely destroyed. It begins with an out-of-control train.
60, 70, 80!
And ends with a raging fire.
You could see a huge cloud of black smoke in the air.
The scene looked like Dante's Inferno.
The disasters appear linked, but they happen more than a week apart. Investigators comb through the wreckage to find the hidden connection.
Help! Somebody help me!
They uncover a series of shocking decisions which have deadly consequences for some and scar a town forever. Early morning, May the 12th, 1989. On a railroad siding in the desert, a freight train waits to head up over California's San Gabriel Mountains. Frank Holland is the chief engineer for Southern Pacific Freight Train number 7551 East.
Well, my job as an engineer is to get on the train, operate the locomotives, obey the rules, speeds, slow down at restrictions, and get the train from point A to point B.
His work on this trip actually began the night before at the Mojave Rail Yard. Some of Southern Pacific's freight trains are put together here, picking up crews and engines to take them across the country. Holland is here to collect the paperwork he'll need for the journey.
Hey, Frank.
Holland was promoted to chief engineer 3 years before.
Okay, clearance form, train orders, train list, and tonnage profile.
His paperwork tells him he's hauling 69 freight cars, each one weighing 54,431 kilos. Holland also learns that the cars are all filled with the same thing, trona. It's a non-toxic chemical used in fertilizer.
So you start making your calculations on what kind of horsepower you're going to have to take that train down that hill. And that will tell you at what speed you can go.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Altogether, Holland's paperwork tells him he's hauling more than 3.5 million kilos of cargo, more than 10 jumbo jets. The cargo's final destination is South America. Today, Holland's only taking it as far as the West Colton Terminal near Los Angeles. To do that, he'll have to haul the cargo up the San Gabriel Mountains and through the Cajon Pass. Then he'll carefully slow his huge train as it winds down the mountain.
Hey guys, we're going down to West Colton. We got 69 cars filled with trona.
Everett Crown is the conductor of 7551. He'll sit up in the front engine to assist Holland. Alan Reese is the brakeman this morning. He'll ride 2 engines back. Between them, the 3 men have almost 50 years of experience working the trains with Southern Pacific. To make sure he has enough power to move his train up and down the mountain, Holland has asked for a little assistance. Southern Pacific dispatchers sent him 2 helper engines. Lawrence Hill is the engineer at the back. Robert Waterbury is his brakeman. While they've run this route before, it's not where they normally work. They don't know the weight of the cargo they're helping to haul, and they don't ask. 7551 East now has 4 engines up front and 2 behind. With the last 2 in place, the train is all set to go.
Helper calling head end.
Head end.
Coupled and ready to go.
Roger that.
.7551 East slowly gathers steam. In just an hour and a half, it'll reach the top of the mountains, the 1,300-meter-high Cajon Pass.
Helper to head end.
Head end.
We've cleared the siding.
Thank you.
On the other side of the mountains, the town of San Bernardino is slowly coming to life. The Muscoy section is a fairly new development on the northwestern edge of the town. It's filled with single-story homes and growing families. Christopher Shaw is waking up at 2326 Duffy Street. It's his mother's house, but after a fight with his girlfriend, he'd spent the night. Across the street, Ruth Green has succeeded in getting 3 children out of bed and off to school. Her only daughter, Lavon, is staying home.
It's just my daughter and I, and we're just making ready for what we considered a normal morning. We had our breakfast and was straightening up in the kitchen.
One of the only things people don't like about this part of San Bernardino is the train tracks. Trains race by on top of a 6-meter-high levee. Some of the houses on Duffy Street back right up to the tracks.
When the homes went up for sale, the realtor was showing my husband a home that was on the same side of the street as the tracks. The tracks would have been behind our home, and he said no, he didn't want that.
Just after 7 a.m., 7551 East reaches the highest point of its trip, the Cajon Pass. It's all downhill from here. The pass is a vital rail link between Los Angeles and the rest of the world. It's one of only 3 ways to get through the mountains. Dozens of trains rumble through here every day.
Traditionally, in railroading, mountain railroaders are respected as the big guys, the tough guys, because they have the most demanding job. Cajon Pass is one of the toughest mountain passes for railroaders to deal with in the entire United States. So many trains go over it, and it is extremely demanding that everyone has to be on their toes 100% all the time.
No chance.
No?
No.
Engineer Frank Holland and conductor Everett Crown have the train right on time. There hasn't been any communication between the men at the front and the 2 men at the back of the train since the trip began. There's been no need. Everything's running smoothly. Now comes the most critical part of the journey, slowing the massive train as it starts down the mountain.
What we do when we run a train from the Mojave area to Colton is basically we drive it off a cliff. At that point, the track tips over and goes downhill at a very steep grade, 2.2%. And for trains, 2.2 feet down in every 100 feet is like falling off a cliff.
As 7551 East begins heading downhill, the crews still believe it's a normal run. What they don't know is that their train is already out of control, and they have no way to slow it down. May the 12th, 1989. Just after 7 in the morning, Southern Pacific Freight Train 7551 East begins the long, slow descent from the top of the San Gabriel Mountains. The massive train is hauling 69 cars full of freight. At the bottom of the hill, the sleepy town of San Bernardino, California. As the tracks start dipping downhill, engineer Frank Holland first applies his dynamic brakes. They slow each of the 6 engines, reducing the speed of the entire train. He's only allowed to go 48 kilometers an hour through the pass. He checks in with Lawrence Hill, the engineer in the helper engine at the back of the train, to make sure he can maintain his speed.
Call in the helper.
This is the helper.
You got all your dynamics?
Yeah, I'm in full.
Roger that.
The first part of the downhill run twists back and forth 56 times. The friction from the turns helps slow the mammoth train. Even with the turns, Holland starts applying his air brakes. They put pressure on the wheels of each freight car. The train is now traveling at 40 kilometers an hour. That's exactly where Holland wants it to stay. Once through the curves, though, Holland's brakeman Everett Crown notices that the train is picking up speed.
Frank, we're at 30.
Should be at 25.
The train actually was maintaining its speed. It might have been picking up just a little bit, but we still had a long way to go.
creeping.
Confused, Holland continues to increase the pressure on the air brakes. But the train just keeps going faster.
By the time it reached 40 miles an hour, I was very concerned. The train was speeding.
As the train approaches 72 kilometers an hour, Holland turns his air brakes on full. But it doesn't help. At the bottom of the hill, the track bends around the town of San Bernardino. Frank Holland knows he's not supposed to go more than 64 kilometers an hour around the corner. Partway down the hill, he's already going much faster than that. Ruth Green's husband has left for work. Her 3 youngest children are off to school. Across the street, Chris Shaw is just about to take a shower. Engineer Frank Holland knows there are several houses that are right in the way if his train comes off the track.
I've been over that territory many times, and yeah, I knew that there was a curve coming down there that we weren't going to make.
At the back of the train, engineer Lawrence Hill also knows they're in trouble. The air brakes are turned on full, but the train isn't slowing down at all.
Something must be wrong up there.
Without talking to the front of the train, Hill slams on the train's emergency brakes. It's their last chance.
The train at that point tried to slow down a little bit. A couple seconds later, it was off to the races. It just took off like a rocket. The speed was going up so fast, I couldn't even believe it.
The emergency brakes haven't worked. Smoke begins pouring out from underneath the train, and it just keeps going faster.
60, 70, 80.
It stopped at 90 because that's as far as the speedometer would go.
But Holland knows 7551 East is still picking up speed.
I'm thinking, my God, I'm fired. Actually, that's what I thought. I'm just looking at everything that I've done. I'm trying to go back and see where I had made a mistake, what had happened.
7551 to West Colton. 7551 to West Colton.
We're trying to get a hold of the train dispatcher, and he won't answer.
The train is out of control, and they can't tell anyone about it.
At that point, we're just kind of out there by ourselves.
Try that phone again.
7551 to West Colton.
West Colton, go ahead.
We have a slight problem.
At the back of the train, engineer Lawrence Hill listens to the radio call.
I don't know if we can get this train stopped.
He breaks in, desperate to tell the dispatcher how dangerous the situation is.
Mayday, Mayday! We're doing 90 miles an hour. 90! Out of control. Won't be able to stop till we hit Colton.
But there's nothing the dispatcher can do. The train is traveling at more than 160 kilometers an hour. The houses of San Bernardino are just seconds away. Down in the town, a strange rumbling breaks the morning calm.
My house began to vibrate. The house was rattling so hard, I would have thought that the windows would have broke. It just got worse and worse. By then, I realized it was the train.
As we were coming up to that curve, I looked over at Everett and I said,
"We're gonna die on that curve."
He wild-eyed, like he was just couldn't believe and just scared to death, and I'm sure I looked the same way. All I knew is that I just put my feet up there and I said, hang on, here we go. I never expected to survive.
dispatcher. Please come in. We're on the ground here between Dyke and Stover. Mayday! Mayday!
In the helper engine at the back of the train, engineer Lawrence Hill desperately calls the Southern Pacific dispatcher. Being at the end of the train has saved him from injury, but he's not sure everyone else has been so lucky.
SP7551! Anybody, please come in!
It takes more than a minute for Hill to get a response to his frantic call.
Saugus Dispatcher, 7551 East, over.
Saugus Dispatcher, we are all over the ground here. I haven't heard anything from the head end. They may need some assistance. We went on the ground.
Incredibly, engineer Frank Holland survives the wreck. The man in charge of the train crawls away from his ruined engine, the first of the cars to derail.
Everett, where's Everett? We gotta get him. He's still inside.
Let's get you down first.
He's helped out of the train by eyewitnesses to the disaster.
When they pulled me off of the locomotive and set me down, it was just, I just couldn't believe it. The cars were just mangled, the locomotives were destroyed. It was just, you know, unbelievable devastation. I look back at that and I went, oh my God, what did I do?
Frank Holland has broken several ribs. One of his lungs is punctured. The man who was riding with him, Everett Crown, is soon found dead. As is Alan Reese, the brakeman who was riding in the third engine. Footage taken shortly after the crash shows the scale of the disaster. 7 houses have been destroyed. The train itself is a write-off.
As the dust cleared, then you could see some of the cars had, you know, toppled over. You could see that it looked like, you know, some houses were gone.
You could see just a twisted, jumbled mass of metal. These cars are turned over. You're really trying to grapple with, what is this? What's happened?
Alan Simpson is a battalion chief with the San Bernardino Fire Department.
The house that we focused on, with the information that the mother gave us about one individual, was totally obliterated. You wouldn't have recognized it as a house. It looked like a jumble of somebody gone through it with a bulldozer.
They were hollering that there's somebody still in there. We later learned that that was where Chris Shaw lived. And when you looked at that house, it was like you would say there was no way anybody could still be alive under all of that rubble and wreckage.
The wreckage is also hiding an explosive problem no one in the neighborhood knew about. Running alongside the railway, about 2 meters below the ground, is a pipeline carrying fuel back up the mountain. If it's been damaged in the derailment, a single spark could cause a major explosion.
Prior to this incident, we were not aware that this pipeline existed and ran directly behind our homes.
The thought's always in the back of your mind if you have something like that. This is major, 14-inch pipe full of pressurized fuel. We know what that's going to do if it ruptures.
The pipeline is operated by the Calnev Pipeline Company. It pulls hundreds of barrels of fuel from the pipe, trying to reduce the size of any potential explosion. But much more fuel remains behind. Automatic safety valves in the pipeline that are supposed to shut off individual sections aren't working. The company can't completely drain the area under the derailment. Almost 3 hours after the crash, rescue workers find the body of a small child. He's the second young boy killed in the disaster.
Well, after we recovered the 2 children from the one house, there wasn't a lot of hope for finding anybody else at that point. But you never give up hope. You always keep trying.
But there's pressure to wind the search down. Every moment spent looking for Chris Shaw further delays the cleanup. And Kalnev can't check the pipeline properly until the rail cars are gone. An entire neighborhood holds its breath. Is there any chance Shaw could possibly have lived through the disaster? Southern Pacific train 7551 East has crashed into San Bernardino, California. 4 people are dead, and an entire neighborhood has been evacuated. A gas pipeline under the wreck hasn't been checked yet. Chris Shaw was in one of the houses destroyed when the train derailed. 12 hours later, he's still missing. George Avery, a firefighter for less than a year, takes his shift at the crash site.
We were ordered to relieve the crews that were trying to search for a body. And at that time, they thought it was a body recovery.
Shaw is the last person in the neighborhood still to be accounted for. Workers ask his mother to draw a map of the house. She tells them her son was in the bathroom when the train derailed. Workers concentrate their final search effort there.
There's pieces of the house itself sticking out of this big potash mound. So you have studs and rafters and roof covering. So they gave me a specific area, so I started removing the product. And as I did so for, it seemed like an eternity, but it was probably an hour, hour and a half, this void occurred and started to reveal itself in front of me.
As Avery reaches into the opening, he feels something snag his jacket.
So then I immediately pulled it out, thinking it was caught on a nail or whatever. As I pulled it out and looked inside, I saw this hand waving in front.
I found him! I found him! Help! Somebody help me!
It takes workers nearly an hour and a half to pull Chris from the wreckage. Debris from the train had formed a protective cocoon around him. It gave Shaw air to breathe and kept the jagged metal from crushing him.
We were absolutely amazed that he lived, especially that long. We're talking about most of the day. Really didn't think he had much of a chance, so when he came up out of there, it was just stunning.
With Shaw's rescue, everyone in the neighborhood and on the train has been found. The wreck of 7551 East has killed 4 people, injured 4 more, and totally destroyed 7 houses. Even with Shaw's rescue, San Bernardino's troubles aren't over yet. If the Kalnev pipeline has been damaged, it could explode at any time, destroying more homes and taking more lives. With that threat hanging over the neighborhood, the search for the cause of the derailment begins. William Pugh and Russell Quimby are with the National Transportation Safety Board.
By the time the team got there, it was fairly late and it was dark, and the scene looked like Dante's Inferno. A lot of wreckage, a lot of parts still, particularly the brake parts, wheels, red hot, still after 12 hours. Wheels had gotten so hot they'd literally expanded off the axles.
The friction between the wheels, the brakes, and the tracks was so intense that the wheels themselves began to liquefy, turning to molten steel as the train sped down the hill. Investigators know the train's brakes couldn't slow it down, but why? The next day, cleanup operations begin. Southern Pacific needs to clear its ruined train from the area. It's the only way investigators can work and Kalnev can check its pipeline. Southern Pacific has all of the cars moved 2 days later, but the ground is still covered with 7551 East's cargo, hundreds of tons of trona. Kalnev begins clearing the trona along the route of the pipeline. It's the quickest way to inspect the line, and it keeps the heavy equipment away.
They made 5 or 6 excavations down to the pipeline to visually look at the pipeline. They felt comfortable that nothing had penetrated to the depth of the pipeline.
The fuel is under incredible pressure. Any damage could lead to a massive leak and possible explosion. But Kalnev finds nothing. The depth of the pipe has shielded it from the storm above. The pipeline is a vital source of gas for Las Vegas, almost 320 kilometers away. It supplies both civilian and military customers in the desert. There's pressure to get the gas moving again.
There were a number of people in the community that thought it should not be open, and supposedly people in Las Vegas had said that they had cars that were worth more than our homes on Duffy Street, and so fire up the pipeline.
Just 4 days after the derailment, the pipeline is restarted. Kalnev watches for any drop in pressure. It would mean fuel was escaping, that there was a leak somewhere in the system. But it holds. The very same day, Southern Pacific finishes its repairs on the damaged railway. Trains are once again moving past San Bernardino. The cleanup isn't quite finished, though. More of the ash-like cargo of train 7551 East is littered across the area. Heavy machinery comes in to dig it up and haul it away. The huge machines could easily damage the pipeline, so it's carefully marked with stakes.
I told my husband one evening that I smelled gas, but we had been reassured that they had inspected this line and that there were no leaks.
I was at the accident site until it was finally cleaned up and there was a fence put around the area and secured. And it looked like everything was fine.
Early morning, May the 25th. It's been almost 2 weeks since 7551 East derailed, slamming into San Bernardino. But the cleanup was fast. For more than a week, the trains and the fuel in a pipeline below have been running smoothly. Then, from a clear sky, rain seems to fall. Large sections of the neighborhood are soaked by this peculiar shower. Ruth Green is back in her house when for the second time in a month, she's confronted with a horrifying sight.
To the left of me, as far as I could see up, down, or side to side, was nothing but a big wall of fire. I got to the front door, neighbors were screaming, "Get out, get out." I ran for my life.
Once again, the fire department responds to a major disaster on Duffy Street.
As we're getting the call and getting on the rig and opening the door, there was no doubt in my mind what that was. You could see a huge column of smoke and flame, and I knew immediately it had to be the pipeline.
A tower of smoke and flame reaches more than 100 meters into the sky.
Initially, when we got in there, we were so close that the plastic lenses on the front of the engine melted. Several of the turn signals, part of the red lights, melted. There's an intense noise coming from this pipeline where it had ruptured. It sounded like a jet engine. Deafening is how I would describe it. And we dealt with that all day long.
Local firefighters aren't the only ones called back to the scene.
I got a call report to the chairman's office. I went down to the chairman's office, notified that the pipeline blew up, and that I should get my team together again.
The area looked more or less like a war zone, where a lot of damage, a lot of fire damage had been done. Houses in the area were incinerated.
Once again, Kalnev, which runs the pipeline, can't shut its emergency valves. Almost 2 million liters of fuel burn for more than 7 hours. By the time the flames are out, 2 people are dead. 3 more are injured. Another 11 houses have been destroyed. The residents of San Bernardino are in shock.
They talked about the fact that one of the people that died, that all they really could find was their shoes that were left in one spot. And that, you know, the mental picture of that, it troubles you quite a bit.
After the fire, it was over for me. I couldn't see myself living in the house anymore. It really scared me just that bad.
What people here will soon learn is that all of the damage, pain, and suffering is the result of a simple, horrifying mistake. A small neighborhood in San Bernardino, California, has been devastated by 2 disasters. In just 13 days, a train derailment and a gas explosion have ripped through the area, killing 6 people. Investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board study both accidents. With the train crash, they focus on black boxes, which were recovered from 3 of the engines.
And that records distance, speed, throttle position, air brake pressures, that we tried to figure out what speed the train eventually got to. It exceeded the graph.
The black boxes reveal that 7551 East had probably reached the incredible speed of 177 kilometers per hour before derailing. The speed limit on the curve was just over 60 kilometers an hour. Although the train's brakes had been applied, it continued accelerating. How had the train become so out of control?
Almost all accidents are a chain of events that link together to cause the accident. Of course, any one point, if you'd broken that link, you know, the accident wouldn't have occurred.
Like other freight trains, 7551 East has 2 different systems to slow it down: dynamic brakes and air brakes. Air brakes push a block against the wheels of each freight car. The greater the pressure applied to the block, the slower the train goes. Investigators learned that the air brakes were working properly as the train started down the hill. As the train sped up, though, engineer Frank Holland maintained pressure on the air brakes. The heat created by the brakes became so intense that they melted. By the time of the crash, they were useless. The team turns its focus to the dynamic brakes. The dynamic brakes harness a magnetic field created by the engine's main generator. They reverse the magnetic field, which slows the axles on the locomotive. There were 4 engines at the front of the train, and 2 at the back. Before beginning his trip, engineer Frank Holland knew that his second engine wasn't working at all, and that the dynamic brakes on his 4th engine were only working sporadically. Still, it was more than enough.
We figured that with the units that we had on the head end and the 2 helpers that they gave us later on, we could do 30 miles an hour down that grade with no problem.
When his train starts down the mountain, Holland has it under control. With the brakes he has, he should be able to hold his speed, but he can't.
Frank, we're at 30.
It should be at 25.
It's creeping.
What the NTSB investigators discover from the black boxes is stunning. The brakes on the 3rd engine at the front of the train didn't work at all as 7551 East gathered speed. During the trip, Holland had even checked with the brakeman in the 3rd engine.
Alan.
Yeah.
What are your dynamics like?
They're revving.
But the black boxes show investigators that even though the dynamic brakes were making the noise they usually make, they weren't working. They weren't helping slow the train down at all. But it gets worse.
Coupled and ready to go.
Roger
Of
that.
the 2 engines added to the back of the train, one didn't have any braking power either. Lawrence Hill, the engineer at the back, knew it, but he never told Frank Holland.
He didn't communicate to him that he had only one locomotive at a dynamic, the other one was out. The helper engineer thought that the dispatcher would notify the lead engineer.
Call in the helper.
This is the helper.
You got all your dynamics?
Yeah, I'm in full.
So when Holland asks Hill at the back of the train if he has all of his dynamics, Hill says yes. But he only means in the one engine. It's a startling discovery. Holland doesn't have anywhere near the braking power he thinks he does. Investigators studying the black boxes uncover one more secret of the train's terrifying ride down the mountain.
Something must be wrong up there.
When Lawrence Hill pulled the emergency brakes, he actually cancelled out the dynamic brakes. It's a safety feature to keep the wheels from locking and the train from sliding down the tracks. In this case, with the air brakes melting, the dynamic brakes were the only thing holding the train back. Putting the emergency brakes on actually sped the train up.
When the emergency brakes are applied, what happens is you lose your dynamic braking and you've got a runaway train now.
But Pugh is still puzzled. According to all the paperwork, 7551 East was hauling 3.5 million kilos of cargo. At that weight, even with his crippled engines, Holland should have been able to hold his speed going down the mountain. To find out why he couldn't, investigators turned their attention to the days before the accident. "7551 East was pulling a shipment for Lake Minerals. 5 days before the trip began, the company's superintendent drops off the proper paperwork with Thomas Blair, who works for Southern Pacific. The paperwork outlines what's in the shipment and, normally, how much it weighs.
Thanks.
In this case, though, the weight was not filled in. Lake Minerals believed each of the cars was filled to its maximum, 90,000 kilos.
Hey! Hey!
Since that's what the company expected, Lake Minerals didn't think there was any reason to put the number down. But Blair knows that to fill out the proper computer forms, he'll need to have a weight, or the train won't be able to leave the train yard. Blair has been working with Southern Pacific for 17 years. He's seen thousands of freight cars leave his yard. He makes an educated guess that the material in each car on the train weighs 54,000 kilos. But Blair's guess is a tragic miscalculation. Every single freight car on 7551 East is actually carrying 36,000 kilos more material than he estimated. Across 69 cars, it means that the train is actually more than 6 jumbo jets, 2.5 million kilos heavier than anyone thinks it is.
Nobody caught the fact that the weights were way under.
Train orders, train lists, and tonnage profile.
From then on, the engineer had a profile of the train that showed 6,100 ton.
I'll be back at 3. Okay.
He operated that way, and it was wrong. It was dramatically wrong. I mean, that was only 2/3 of the weight of that train.
That train was doomed, and we just didn't know it.
Frank Holland was in trouble before his trip began. Even if all of his engines were working, it would have been a difficult trip down the mountain. With all the problems he had, he simply didn't have the power to slow his enormous train down. crashing into San Bernardino was all but inevitable from the beginning. The wreck of 7551 East was a preventable disaster. Investigators are about to discover that the explosion which followed didn't have to happen either. In May of 1989, twin disasters shatter the town of San Bernardino, California. A train derailment and a gas line explosion kill 6 people and destroy more than a dozen houses. Investigators comb through the ashes to learn how the two events are linked. The pipeline was 2 meters below ground. And in the days after the derailment, CalNev examined it closely. They couldn't find a single dent or crack where the train had broken through the earth. The train crash hadn't seemed to weaken the pipeline. And when gas began pumping through the pipe, there was no loss of pressure, no warning sign of a problem.
They started operating and brought it up to about 1,600 pounds, and all of the pressure readings at various places along the pipeline looked normal.
Since the derailment itself didn't cause the rupture, investigators continue their search. They study the pipeline for clues. Even though the fire burned for hours, the piece of pipe that burst has not been destroyed.
When the pipe opened up, it caused a rupture in the pipe that was sort of what we term as a fish mouth shape. And at the widest area, it was about 4 inches wide, and it was about 2.5 feet long.
Like forensic investigators, the NTSB looks for a telltale fingerprint that will help them discover how the pipe broke. Near the spot where the pipe ruptured, investigators find dents and several deeper gouges. The marks are like wounds on a murder victim. If investigators can find out what caused the marks, they'll discover what caused the pipeline to burst.
We knew that there were deposits of hardened steel left in the gouges. We knew that whatever piece of equipment had damaged the pipe had teeth on it that were hardened steel.
There are several possible suspects. A number of front-end loaders and one large backhoe used during the cleanup all had hardened steel teeth. But Batten can never pinpoint the blame.
Well, the NTSB determined that the damage to the pipeline was done during one of 2 phases, either the cleanup of the train wreckage or it was done during the time in which the trona was being cleaned up after the train wreckage had been removed.
2 mistakes resulted in a pair of disasters for San Bernardino and the death of 6 people. In its final report on the disasters, the NTSB doesn't blame Frank Holland, saying his belief that he had enough braking power to stop the train was perfectly reasonable. Holland still rides the rails, but he's never made the trip down the San Gabriel Mountains again.
Psychologically, I just don't think I could take it. I don't think I could relive that. Every time I went down, I would relive it. And I choose not to do that. It'd just be too painful.
CalNev, the company that operated the pipeline, was called to account for not checking it after the cleanup operations were completed. Lawsuits against the company were settled out of court.
CalNev, in hindsight, I think would agree that they should have been much more thorough in their inspection. They got comfortable with what they saw, and they made an assessment without adequate information that it was an undamaged pipeline and okay to operate.
Thomas Blair, who incorrectly filled in the paperwork, was never charged. But after the disaster, Southern Pacific changed its rules so that every freight car without a specified weight was assumed to be carrying its maximum allowable load. Southern Pacific also settled a number of lawsuits out of court. The company no longer exists. It was bought out years after the disaster. Trains continue to run past San Bernardino, but many of the families involved in the disaster moved away.
Trains were still coming down out of Cajon Pass. And so a person couldn't help but go in their mind go to where, what if that this thing could happen again?
Houses aren't allowed beside the tracks anymore. All that's left is an ugly scar of land. There's no monument here to mourn those who died, or to mark the day when disaster came to Duffy Street. A 747 plummets towards the Pacific Ocean.
People just popped up like popcorn.
This airplane is totally out of control. It is going to crash.
In 2 minutes, China Airlines Flight 006 drops 10 kilometers through the clouds.
Airspeed 270, 280, 290.
The plane begins to tear itself apart as it spirals towards the sea.
And I closed my eye. I thought I was gone.
Altitude 15,000 feet, 12,000 feet. 10,000 feet. Emergency, emergency.
February the 19th, 1985. A China Airlines flight cruises across the Pacific to Los Angeles. At 12,000 meters, it's racing towards the dawn. For the passengers and crew on board, it's past midnight. A two-man relief crew is in charge of the plane as it sails above the ocean on autopilot. The main crew gets several hours off in the middle of the trip, so they're rested for the landing. But Captain Mumyan Ho is restless.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Even though he's not officially on duty yet, Captain Ho returns to the cockpit.
Thought I'd keep you company.
The captain isn't the only one up. Best friends Sexan Canyo and Alex Knoll have something to celebrate.
I feel like I'm in first class.
It's Sexan's 30th birthday.
I have the longest birthday because I just gained my 12 hours back. And we've been drinking champagne, celebrating 41,000 feet in the air. You know, not too many people get to do that.
Bill Peacock is in first class. He's traveled all over the world for the American government.
There was nothing special. It was a routine commercial flight. I had a very nice first-class seat, sat there and read some books, went to sleep.
By now, the plane is nearing the coast of California.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
We will shortly be serving you breakfast. For those of you who wish to adjust your watches, the local time in Los Angeles is now 7 a.m.
Sleep well? Very well, sir. Thank you. Good morning, Captain.
After their 5-hour break, the flight crew is reunited in the cockpit. Soon after, the plane runs into some stiff winds.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
We're experiencing some light air turbulence. Please fasten your seatbelt.
The autopilot is set to keep the plane flying at 470 kilometers an hour. But with the wind blowing hard, it's increasingly difficult to maintain the speed. For the crew, the bumpy ride suddenly gets more worrying.
Engine 4 is giving us weak thrust.
There's a problem with one of the engines. The flight engineer throttles up the engine, but it doesn't respond.
We're losing speed.
Back in economy, Sexan Canyo has also noticed something.
You notice the light in that wing isn't flashing anymore.
So what?
I thought there was some light blinking at the tip of the wing. Looked like a cone. But when I look back this time, I didn't see no cone.
Oh, the light in that wing's still flashing.
I think you had a few, buddy. Have a seat.
In the cockpit, the strange situation suddenly gets much worse.
Engine 4 flamed out.
The fourth engine stops working completely.
Take a look at engine out procedures. Work out a 3-engine cruise altitude.
The problem with the fourth engine isn't a complete surprise. At the pre-flight briefing, Captain Ho was told that a repair crew had worked on engine 4 before the flight. Perhaps the engine still wasn't working properly.
We had a snag advisor on engine 4 before we took off.
Yes, sir.
Maybe that's it.
Without the fourth engine, the plane continues to slow down.
Airspeed 240.
Call Oakland Center and request a lower altitude.
Oakland Center.
Dynasty 006, requesting new altitude.
Dynasty 006, stand by.
Reignite engine 4.
Yes, Captain.
At this altitude, there isn't much oxygen, so the chances of a successful relight are slim.
No response, Captain.
As the crew try to restart their engine, their plane slowly begins to roll to the right.
Dynasty 006, you're cleared to flight 240.
We're banking right, Captain. Airspeed 230.
As the plane continues to turn and slow down, it's in danger of stalling.
Altitude hold off. Nose down.
Hoping to increase his speed, Captain Ho tries pushing the plane's nose down. Nothing the crew does seems to help. Their jet is banking more and more steeply.
Dynasty Flight 006, Oakland Center, how do you hear me?
Airspeed 220. We're banking right, Captain.
I'm disengaging autopilot.
For the first time, Captain Ho takes manual control of the plane. He struggles with the controls, but the plane has veered into thick cloud, and he can't see the horizon as he tries to keep his jet level.
I've lost ADI.
The ADIs have malfunctioned. It's going out of limits.
Just minutes after their fourth engine stopped working, the China Airlines flight suddenly stalls and begins falling from the sky.
People just popped up like popcorn, hitting the cabin, and all the tray was flying. hot tea, pots, noodles, and all the luggage in the compartment were hitting people.
You could hear rivets popping. It sounded like bullets were hitting the outside of the aircraft, which, you know, we're out in the middle of the ocean. Nobody's shooting at us.
At that time, we didn't know we were going to live or die.
China Airlines Flight 006 is out of control and hurtling towards the ocean. A China Airlines jet is tumbling out of the sky. After losing power to one engine, the jet is spinning out of control. It's dropping fast, straight towards the Pacific Ocean.
You can see the stewardesses, all these people who didn't have their seatbelt on, they were flying.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center. How do you hear me?
The crew are stunned, blindsided by their jet's bizarre behavior.
Engines 1, 2, and 3 have lost thrust. No response, Captain.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center. How do you hear me?
Airspeed 270, 280.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center. How do you hear me?
Struggling against the plane's wild motion, the flight engineer tries again to restart his fourth engine.
Ignition negative.
The G-forces are so powerful that the flight engineer is pinned to the control pedestal.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center. Do you copy? You need to see this.
In Oakland, air traffic control spots the plane's sudden descent. In a matter of seconds, the plane falls almost 3,000 meters.
Hold to 370, 360, 350.
In the cabin, the G-forces are punishing.
And I closed my eye. I thought I was gone. I thought the plane just blew up in the midair.
The plane is about to exceed its maximum speed.
Approaching VMO.
Tumbling madly through the clouds, the 747 finally starts to pull out of its nosedive. As the plane rights itself, the G-forces change direction. The passengers are pressed to the floor, feeling 5 times their normal weight.
I remember looking over at this dignified, older Chinese gentleman who was sitting across the aisle from me. And his face was being contorted like this, like he was lying on his side in a wax museum in a fire. I mean, his face was just all contorted.
As the crew struggles to regain control of the plane, it begins to slow down.
Airspeed 180 knots and falling.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center. How do you read me?
Airspeed 140 knots and falling.
The jet is still dropping, but not as fast. This could be the crew's chance to regain control.
I knew we were really in trouble because G-forces, instead of being horizontal, started moving around to the vertical. So we were being pushed down into our seats instead of sideways.
As their speed continues to fall, the flight engineer reaches desperately for the engine throttles.
Airspeed 80 knots and falling.
But the engines don't respond.
No response. The engines are flamed out.
After tumbling 3,000 meters in 30 seconds, the jumbo jet plunges again into another free fall.
And the second time when it went down, this time it's plunge. I mean, it went down.
The change is swift. Once again, the passengers feel pulled towards the nose of the plane.
You know, this airplane is totally out of control. It is going to crash. And stuff were sliding around and flying around and shoved to one side and then shoved to another side. So it was kind of like being on a boat that gear is broken loose and it's just going back and forth with the waves. Ugly.
My stomach was up to my throat. You smell people urinating in their pants.
I really made peace with the Lord. And I said, to myself, I said, I've really had a wonderful life. If this is the end, I'm ready to do it.
Altitude 250. Airspeed 290.
As the plane spins towards the ocean, the airspeed increases rapidly.
Dynasty 006.
With the crews struggling to control the plane, 6 separate calls from air traffic control go unanswered. The stress of the dive tears the landing gear doors off the plane. In less than a minute, the plane drops 6 kilometers.
He said, I love you, man. I told him I love you, man. And we said goodbye to our wife. And he said something about his belonging. He gave all his belonging to his wife. And that's when we just start pushing our chair back together.
Altitude 15,000 feet.
With no visible horizon line, Captain Ho doesn't know which way is up.
We passed BMO.
Without a reference, he can't stop the plane from spinning.
Emergency! Emergency!
After blindly plunging thousands of meters, the plane finally breaks free from cloud.
And when this thing was falling down, it looked like you have a magnifying glass and you went like that, and all of a sudden the white water break becoming closer and closer, faster and faster. It's like incredible, and we thought we were going to die.
Altitude 12,000 feet.
As he struggles for control, Captain Ho has only 30 seconds before his crippled plane smashes into the ocean.
I can see the horizon. Altitude 10,000 feet.
For the first time since beginning his harrowing descent, the captain can now use the horizon line as a reference in leveling the plane. As he tries to pull the plane out of its dive, the passengers pay the price. Their bodies are forced into their seats, battered by another dramatic change in direction.
The G-force was so strong, and I weighed 200 pounds, so my weight was almost 1,200 pounds.
It's a race against time, and the plane starts to win.
ADI is coming back.
As the plane finally begins to level, the attitude indicators return to normal.
ADI is coming in.
More importantly, as mysteriously as the incident began, 3 of the plane's engines regain power.
Engines 1, 2, and 3 are coming back. Engine 4 still negative. Reignite engine 4. Yes, Captain.
Once again, the flight engineer tries to reignite the 4th engine. But this time...
Engine 4 reigniting.
For the first time in minutes, the plane is flying under control.
They saved the airplane. They pulled the airplane out of this acrobatic maneuver at an altitude of 9,500 feet. They popped out of the clouds at 11,000 feet, and they had the airplane in stable level flight by 9,500 feet. That was a masterpiece of flying.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking.
Is anyone hurt?
Do we have a doctor on board?
There's a gentleman be sitting behind me, all splattered with blood from hitting the compartment. So we kept flying. And next thing I knew that the whole plane was quiet, real quiet. Nobody talked very much. If they talk, we're whispering because we don't know, we still don't know we're gonna live or die.
Dynasty 006 fell off my screen, but she's back now.
A new controller, Brian Campbell, has taken over control of Dynasty 006.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center, do you hear me? Can you fly the plane?
006, we are flamed out. We are... Emergency. We are 9,000. 9,000.
Roger, roger. We have radar contact.
Oakland Center, Dynasty 006, we can control the aircraft.
Roger, roger.
Less than 10 minutes after the start of their problems, everything seems normal again.
Request radar vectors to return to course.
There really is nothing I can do to assist. He's the pilot, he's flying the airplane. I'm going to give him a safe altitude to descend to. I'm giving him a destination. It appeared to me that he was well in control of his aircraft.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center, are you declaring an emergency? Do you want to divert to San Francisco?
Negative, Oakland Center. Condition normal now. We will continue to Los Angeles.
Air traffic control clears the plane to climb to 10,500 meters. But a new problem soon arises.
Roger, Oakland Center. Captain, our landing gear is down and walk. Can you bring them up? Negative. The hydraulic fluid in System 1 is empty.
For some reason, the plane's landing gear is down. Hydraulic fluid, which controls the gear and many other parts of the plane, is also leaking away.
Oakland Center, Dynasty 006, request new clearance to maintain flight level 270.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center, do you have injuries?
Stand by, Oakland Center.
Sir, are you okay? My head.
One passenger has suffered serious injuries, and 24 others have cuts and bruises.
006, we have at least 2 injuries on board.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center, are you declaring an emergency? Do you want to divert to San Francisco?
Stand by, Oakland Center.
Oakland Center, Dynasty 006, we're declaring an emergency. We request a direct route
to San Francisco.
Well, they cleared all the other airplanes out of the way. They gave him clear runway, so nobody was waiting. Didn't have to wait for anybody else. He went straight in for a landing.
Dynasty 006, Oakland Center, you are now cleared. You are free to descend at pilot's discretion.
Captain Ho not only has injuries on board, the plane itself has been severely damaged. His rear elevators, which help control the altitude of the plane, don't seem to be working. Without them, landing his jet safely will be extremely difficult.
The problem is, it's a very big airplane and it responds very, very slowly, and you just might not do it before you run out of air. You might hit the ocean. What you need is a very cool head.
Captain Ho must now land using varying amounts of engine thrust. After pulling the plane out of its terrifying dive, if he makes one mistake, Flight 006 could still end in disaster. Nearing the end of a trip across the Pacific Ocean, China Airlines Flight 006 falls suddenly from the sky.
No response! The engines are flamed out! Emergency! Emergency!
After a terrifying plunge, the crew manages to wrestle the plane level again. But the jet is badly crippled. The elevators aren't working. Without them, Captain Ho has to land mostly by reducing power to his engines. It's a controlled fall towards the runway.
As we came in, we flew over the house in Atherton where I had lived, where my kids had been born. And I looked down and said, boy, this is fitting. If we don't make it down, or if this plane explodes on landing because it's been so badly torqued and ruptured, you know, at least I got to see that. He made one of the best landings I've ever seen. I mean, it was just perfect touchdown.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Ho speaking. Wishing you a safe journey. I hope you enjoyed our
uneventful flight. Thank you for flying China Airlines.
I thought he was a hero. He saved our life. I mean, how can we fell we don't know how far we fell at that time. And we thought he was a hero and everything was fine.
On the ground, the full extent of the damage to the plane can be seen.
I saw this enormous piece of extremely complicated machinery that is much larger than most buildings, sitting there on the tarmac with bits ripped off it. Parts of the entire tailplane at the end were ripped off, as though a tornado had come through or a crane had been in and ripped pieces out of it. It was a very sobering experience.
It's clear why the crew had such a hard time landing the plane. Enormous chunks of the tail are missing, either torn off by the stress of the dive or crushed when the landing gear doors broke loose. If the damage had been much more severe, the crew wouldn't have been able to regain control of their jet. 24 passengers have minor injuries. Only one requires hospitalization, but is soon released. A near disaster was avoided. But what had gone wrong in the first place? The National Transportation Safety Board arrived that very day and launched their investigation. The cockpit voice recorder is sent to Washington, but it's designed to tape over itself every 30 minutes. None of what happened in the cockpit during the terrifying plunge from the sky remains.
Without a cockpit voice recorder, we had to reconstruct what the crew said and how they interpreted things and what was going on in the cockpit to the best of our abilities with the other data that was available to us.
A record of the plane's instrument activity during the flight has been captured by the flight data recorder. But again, the team runs into a problem. The flight data recorder experienced unprecedented stress during the dive. There were electrical interruptions too, which caused gaps in the recording. The FDR information will have to be recovered using painstaking techniques of reconstruction. It's a frustrating start to the investigation. Investigators begin with what they do have. Passengers and crew report that just before the failure of the jet's fourth engine, the plane flew through unexpected turbulence. Had this caused the engine to fail? Satellite weather maps revealed that there was indeed heavy air turbulence over the Pacific. But it wasn't severe enough to cause engine failure. The jet's 4 engines are tested and studied. Even after the horrific dive through the sky, they're found to be in working order. However, given the previous history of problems with Engine 4, it receives particular scrutiny.
They had an anomaly with one of the engines. They believed that the engine had flamed out or that there was something seriously wrong with the engine.
The wear on a small throttle valve trimmer is measured. It's worn down by only 4/1000th of an inch, but that's enough to restrict the fuel flow to Engine 4.
Engine 4 is giving us good thrust.
Investigators determined that at 12,000 meters, engine 4 did indeed deliver weaker than normal thrust. It's known as a hung engine. The aircraft logbook reveals that engine 4 had been written up on 2 previous occasions just the week before. Perhaps the engine wasn't properly fixed, which led to the China Airlines mishap. The NTSB decided to dig deeper into the history of maintenance on engine 4.
We had a snag advisor on engine 4 before we took off.
Yes, sir.
Maybe that's it.
But after weeks of investigation, the NTSB concludes that the engine didn't need to be replaced. All the repairs were done according to the book. A faulty engine was not the cause of the accident. And even with the loss of one engine, the plane shouldn't have been in immediate danger.
Engine 4 flamed out.
A 747 is designed to fly on only 3 engines.
The loss of thrust on a 4-engine airplane is a minor event. It's an event, you have to take care of it, but the airplane is easily retrimmed and the airplane will fly on 3 engines with no difficulty.
We're banking right, Captain. Airspeed 230.
The airplane is perfectly capable of flying. It's not as efficient because it's got this big, round, drag-producing device out there, not producing any thrust. But given that it's not going to get quite so many miles per gallon, otherwise it's perfectly flyable.
Take a look at engine out procedures. Work out a 3-engine cruise altitude. Yes, Captain.
There are standard procedures to follow in the case of an engine failure, but the crew of the China Airlines flight hadn't followed them. They tried to reignite the engine immediately instead of descending.
Reignite engine 4.
Yes, Captain.
They attempted a restart much too high. You are supposed to attempt to restart an engine only below 30,000 feet. They were at 41,000.
What is a little curious to me is why they didn't use the normal relight procedure. They were starting to try to relight the engine at altitude, and that would likely not relight.
No response, Captain.
It's a mistake, but it shouldn't have led to the plane spiraling out of control. So how had a manageable problem turned into a near disaster?
I've lost ADI.
The ADIs have malfunctioned.
It's going out of limits.
To get more information on what was happening in the cockpit, investigators interview the flight crew.
I heard the captain report the ADI was lost. And then I saw the standby ADI was also going out of limits.
The crew tell investigators that their ADIs, which measure how level the plane is, weren't working.
They could have said, this can't possibly be right. And looking at their indicators, can't possibly be right, and therefore they must have failed.
The attitude indicator had indicated a position so implausible that it looked like it had to be a failed instrument. This couldn't be what the plane was really doing.
But in fact, when the ADIs are studied by the NTSB, they're all found to be perfectly normal.
When we started banking right, engine 4 was already flamed out. We started to descend faster, and engines 1, 2, and 3 also failed.
Engines 1, 2, and 3 have lost thrust.
NTSB investigators are even more confused when the crew tells them that all of their engines had failed.
No response, Captain.
With the exception of engine 4, the flight data recorder indicates that the other 3 engines were working the entire flight.
Ignition negative.
If the engines had all failed, there would have been a host of other problems, such as cabin depressurization, but that didn't happen.
Engines 1, 2, and 3 are coming back. Finally, when we descended lower in altitude, 1, 2, and 3 came back, and we were able to reignite engine number 4.
Engine 4 reignited.
At the end of the dive, the crew had the plane under full power. It was a remarkable recovery. But to investigators, it's a puzzle. The story the crew is telling doesn't match up with the evidence they've uncovered. After months of investigation, the NTSB team slowly pieced together a reenactment of the plane's near catastrophe over the Pacific. It includes information from the reconstructed flight recorder, personal interviews, and the air traffic control transcript. When the work is complete, there's only one conclusion. Apart from a problem with a small valve, there was nothing wrong with the 747 before it plunged from the sky. In fact, it was the crew that made a series of fateful decisions that almost crashed the plane. Just after 10 o'clock Pacific time, Engine 4 starts to lose thrust.
Engine 4 is giving us weak thrust.
The flight engineer struggles to fix the problem. But investigators discover that he doesn't take one of the most basic steps he should have. He leaves the engine's bleed air valve on. The bleed air valve takes air generated by the engine to help cool the plane. When an engine isn't working properly, the valve is supposed to be closed, so the engine can use all available air to restart.
It's a little puzzling that the flight engineer didn't shut off bleed air. And in my mind, the most likely reason for it is that he didn't expect to be told to restart the engine at 41,000 feet. And so when the captain instructed him to try some restarts, he just kind of wasn't ready with his checklist. He was doing something out of order. And that's why it didn't occur to him to shut down the bleed air. The end result is that the engine, which is slow to start, won't start at all.
Unwittingly, the flight engineer has started a ticking clock. Engine 4 is slowly losing its ability to stay lit.
We're losing speed.
With more engine power on the left wing than the right, the China Airlines flight begins turning.
In order to keep it from turning to the right, the proper thing to do would have been to step on the rudder. That would have produced a twisting force, so to speak, that would have overcome the imbalance of the engines.
But instead of adjusting the rudder himself, Captain Ho continues to let the autopilot fly the jet. The autopilot is designed not to move the rudder. The autopilot can adjust the ailerons and spoilers on the plane's wings, but these flaps aren't strong enough to overcome the imbalance that the plane is experiencing. Without the help of the rudder, the plane's turn becomes steeper and steeper.
Now, it's possible that he'd forgotten that the autopilot didn't use the rudder. He may have been assuming all along that the autopilot was just flying the airplane the way a human being would have, which it wasn't.
Engine 4 flamed out.
Investigators discover that after losing power to his fourth engine, Captain Ho continues to leave the autopilot on. He doesn't take complete control of the plane. He doesn't adjust the plane's rudder with his left foot.
Airspeed 240.
He didn't use the rudder to compensate for the lack of thrust on the right outboard engine. The airplane started to lose speed, and one thing led to another, and in the end, it was really that little error of airmanship, the failure to step on that left rudder pedal, that triggered everything else.
Reignite engine 4.
Yes, Captain.
Rather than taking control of flying the plane, Captain Ho's attention seems to be focused on his engine problem, something that his flight engineer could handle on his own.
No response, Captain.
It's really critical that attention be paid to flying the airplane. But it's happened over and over again in aviation that the crew gets focused on a problem with a system, in this case an engine, but it could have been a light bulb, it could have been any other malfunction. And if everybody's focused on that and nobody is flying, then they're not prepared for what's happening to the airplane.
The plane enters a critical moment. It's about to flip on its side and enter a nosedive. The NTSB believes that the captain was concentrating on his airspeed indicator, but seemingly fails to notice the instrument directly beside it, his attitude indicator. This instrument would have warned him that his plane was starting to roll alarmingly to the right.
They concentrated on one part of the phenomenon and lost the full picture. And as they lost the full picture, they lost apparently a very important part of any instrument flying, which is the scan. You look at all of the primary instruments, one after the other, and whatever is going on, you look at them all constantly.
During the plane's nosedive, it flies through thick cloud. With no visual horizon as a reference, the flight crew must trust their instruments to level the plane.
I've lost ADI.
Instead, what investigators believe happened is that the crew became spatially disoriented. They decided that their instruments were failing.
They simply didn't believe what they were seeing, and they thought they had lost their attitude instruments. They hadn't lost their attitude instruments. The airplane was, in fact, embarking on an aerobatic maneuver.
The most probable reason for all three crew members believing something so unlikely as that all attitude indicators could malfunction in the same way at the same time is that the way in which they malfunctioned was so unexpected and strange that it didn't seem to correspond to any possible thing that the airplane could be doing. The airplane had in fact rolled over on its back and gone into a vertical dive, and that's something that Boeing 747s don't typically do.
As the plane begins tumbling towards the ocean, another critical lapse in judgment occurs.
The standby ADI was also going out of limits. I tried to restart.
During interviews, the flight engineer told the NTSB that all three of the plane's working engines failed.
We started to descend faster, and engines 1, 2, and 3 also failed.
But the flight data recorder shows that, in fact, they were still working. In the heat of the crisis, the engineer had made an enormous mistake.
Engines 1, 2, and 3 have lost thrust.
The investigation reveals that as the plane fell, the thrust in each engine was indeed reduced dramatically. But the cause wasn't engine trouble. The engine throttles had been lowered to idle in an attempt to slow the furious fall of the jet. It was something the engineer missed in the chaos of the dive.
You can understand why the flight engineer might have been confused about this situation if he had not seen the captain pull the power to idle on the engines. He would reasonably assume that the fact that they went to idle was a problem rather than intentional.
Investigators also believe that they know why the engines didn't give the crew more power when the engineer tried to throttle them up. The cold temperatures at 9,000 meters would stop them from responding quickly.
No response, Captain!
But in the heat of the moment, the engineer could have taken their slow response as another indication that they failed. The NTSB discovers that indeed gauges in the generator panel behind the engineer showed that the three engines were still firing.
Ignition negative!
But the gravitational force became so powerful, the engineer couldn't look back. After months of painstaking recreation, the NTSB investigators believe they understand what happened inside the cockpit of China Airlines Flight 006. But what they don't understand is why. The crew's medical records are examined. Was there something wrong with the captain that might explain the bizarre behavior? Nothing turns up.
You know, it wasn't just the Three Stooges who, won a trip on a 747 or something. It was a trained crew, highly experienced, thousands of hours.
How could an experienced crew make so many fundamental mistakes? The investigators find the answers in the hours before the incident. What they uncover is a potential danger that affects pilots around the world. In 1985, a series of small pilot errors lead to a terrifying plunge from the sky. Spinning wildly out of control, a China Airlines flight tumbled 10 kilometers towards the Pacific Ocean. By the time the crew regained control, the plane was badly damaged. Amazingly, everyone on board survived. Investigators have uncovered a series of mistakes which nearly led to the death of everyone on board China Airlines Flight 006. But how could an experienced, well-trained and healthy crew make so many mistakes? The NTSB team decides to examine all of the factors affecting human behavior, including a new field of research.
For the first time, as far as I know, in a report, the circadian rhythms, the biorhythms, the day and night functioning of the body was seriously taken into account as a possible explanation of why an extremely experienced Boeing 747 captain didn't notice things that to other pilots might have seemed obvious, such as the fact that his airplane was busy flipping on his back when he was attempting to deal with an engine problem.
Although Captain Ho had the required 15 hours off duty before flying that day, the NTSB investigators take a closer look at the captain's schedule before the night of the flight.
I do not think I was fatigued. I can't say I slept well during the flight.
This accident occurred at what would be about 2 a.m. local time. And that's pretty significant. Most people are asleep around 2 a.m. So this incident occurred at a point in his, what are called circadian rhythms, in his body clock, where he would be at his deepest sleep. I remember also that he had gone back into, there was a crew rest area on the 747, and he said he'd rested for 5 hours and slept for 2. But another thing I remember from his interview is he said, you never really sleep well on the airplane.
Captain never sleep well during the flight. I worked many years for this airline, but I never have this problem before.
That seemed like a very true statement. You know, it's hard to get a really solid sleep on the airplane, particularly if you're the person in command, as he was. So, putting it all together, we saw this was an experienced crew, a qualified crew, and they were flying on a schedule that would make them susceptible to some of the negative or adverse effects of fatigue.
During 6 flights in the previous 6 days, Captain Ho had covered a total of 18 time zones.
Thought I'd keep you company.
The NTSB research suggests that desynchronisis, or jet lag, may have been a cause.
And I think all these factors certainly would have contributed to his being performing at less than his full potential at the time.
Investigators also take a closer look at the very machinery that is supposed to make long-distance flying easier.
Take a look at engine out procedures. Work out a 3-engine cruise altitude.
Yes, Captain.
We have people in the front of airplanes because we believe that in circumstances which nobody has foreseen, the human being in the front of the airplane can react creatively, can solve a problem that nobody has thought about before in real time. And automation can't solve problems that nobody has thought about before in real time in quite the same way.
The NTSB concludes that possibly fatigued from air travel and bored by the monotony of his tasks,
We're banking right, Captain.
I'm disengaging autopilot.
the captain relied on his autopilot for too long. When he should have taken direct control, he hesitated, trusting his systems.
That is obviously a failure. The crew didn't behave as they should have behaved. Pilot error.
As a result of the China Airlines near mishap and other incidents around the same time, aircraft manufacturers began to rethink the design of their automated systems.
The idea of the automation is that it's going to help the human do the human's job. It's going to help the human take the airplane from the gate to the gate at the other end, and it's going to help along the way.
Boeing makes use of this particular incident to say we still want the crew to have full authority so that they can move the controls as far as it's physically possible to move them and to manage the airplane, even if it may bend the airplane. It is better to do that than to restrict the pilot's authority and then have him guess whether or not he's in charge or the computer's in charge.
Whatever mistakes the flight crew made that day, they did succeed in their ultimate task.
They flew the airplane well. They did an excellent job with the approach afterward. They were careful with the airplane. They knew the airplane had been damaged. They didn't know the severity of it. They were gentle with the maneuvering and yet tested enough to make sure that they wouldn't get themselves in further trouble as they made the approach to landing.
The one big thing they did right, and one only ever needs to do one big thing, is they saved the airplane. And in principle, that's all you ever need to do right when something happens to your airplane. You need to save the airplane and you need to save the passengers, and that's what they did.
How can you forget something like that? That I survived through that. So it's hard for me to forget that I was lucky and it wasn't my time yet.
The pilot saved our lives. He got us into it, but he got us out of it.
And perhaps there was one other hero that day, the Boeing 747 itself. It was put through maneuvers and stresses that far outweighed its known limits. And yet, despite it all, the aircraft survived and landed safely. Miami Beach, Florida. Sun, sand, and calm blue seas. But when a tourist points his camera towards the sky, he captures a scene of horror. A plane is falling to the sea.
We have a code 4. Repeat, code 4. A plane down in the water.
As soon as I saw this, I realized, I'm like, oh no, this is the Chalk's airplane crashing.
The downed plane is Chalk's Ocean Airways Flight 101, bound for the Bahamas.
Could it have been a collision with an object? Could it have been a fire? Could it have actually been a criminal act?
Let's notify the FBI.
The incredibly rare video may hold the answers.
Can you enhance that for me?
An airline renowned for safety has made a fatal error. But it will take investigators hundreds of hours to finally uncover it.
Bingo.
The Port of Miami, December the 19th, 2005. Giant freighters and ocean-going cruise ships are a common sight. But there's another, much smaller craft that's often seen in this port. Chalk's Ocean Airways flies seaplanes in and out of this busy waterway. Today, Flight 101 from Fort Lauderdale is making a brief stopover here on its way to the Bahamas.
Feather propellers.
Check.
Shut down engine number 1.
Shutting down engine number 1.
Chalk's flies to 2 regular destinations, both in the Bahamas. Bimini, where Flight 101 is scheduled to land this afternoon, and Paradise Island.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
We're just making a short stopover here in Miami to pick up a couple passengers. We apologize for the delay. We'll be on our way again soon.
How many are we picking up?
Just 2, but they're VIPs.
For a small community like Bimini, Chalk's seaplanes are a lifeline.
And it's just so much easier in the seaplane to get to the North Island where most of the population is than going to the airport down there. So that was the main thing. It was a convenience factor.
Welcome aboard. Let's see your boarding passes. Certainly.
Sergio D'Angillicourt is a Bacardi rum executive. He's the great-great-grandson of the company's founder. The family is well known in the local Cuban community for their anti-Castro politics. He and his wife are flying to the Bahamas to buy a yacht.
Passengers settled in?
We're all set.
Good afternoon, folks.
We'd like to welcome you aboard Chocs Ocean Airways Flight 101 to Bimini. Our travel time to Bimini will be 25 minutes.
Hope you enjoy the flight. Let's have the startup checklist, please.
Roger.
Michelle Marks is in command of today's flight. She was promoted to captain earlier this year. First Officer Paul DeSanctis joined the airline 8 months ago.
Starter on.
Starter on.
This is his first flight with Captain Marks.
All clear to taxi?
All clear.
The Grumman Mallard is a twin turboprop design. It has a V-shaped hull and underwing pontoons. It's designed to carry up to 17 passengers. The plane has retractable landing gear, so it can operate on either land or sea.
Gear coming up.
Takeoff in the Mallard, depending on the days, it could be a lot of fun or it could be a real challenge.
Weight and balance check. We're good.
The Miami seaplane base has no control tower. The crew has to keep a lookout for boat traffic as they taxi through one of the busiest ports in the world.
Taking off out of Miami in the shipping channel, it's kind of like trying to take off during rush hour traffic. You've got boat traffic, wave traffic, the wind, the airplane to deal with, and everybody's going different speeds, and you're trying to get up and go and navigate around everybody, so it's always a handful.
Flight 101 will take off from X-44, a seaplane base near a channel known as Government Cut.
Prepare for takeoff.
Roger. Ready to take off.
Both pilots have their hand on the throttles. It's to prevent the captain from inadvertently pulling back if the plane hits a wave.
45 knots. 50 knots.
This is the moment most passengers are paying for, the takeoff. Half speedboat, half plane. It's a unique thrill.
75 knots. 80 knots.
For the pilots, accelerating through the waves is often the most difficult part of the flight.
The airplane itself was really hard to fly as far as on the water, getting onto the step, which is what we call getting on plane. And in rough sea conditions and in rough wave conditions, it could be a real challenge.
But this takeoff goes smoothly. Flight 101 is no longer a boat, it's now a plane en route to Bimini. It's 2:38 in the afternoon. The plane's flight path takes it past South Beach, where sunbathers and surfers are out in force. Just less than a minute into the flight, the Grumman Mallard is climbing through 500 feet, well below the clouds. Then, the plane rolls violently and dives. The pilots barely have time to register what's happening. Their struggles are in vain. By chance, a tourist from New York catches Flight 101's final moments on his camera. 60 seconds after takeoff, the plane slams into the ocean. Lucas Bocanegra is a lifeguard stationed on South Beach near the Chalks Ocean Airways sea lane.
As soon as I saw this, I realized, I'm like, oh no, this is the Chalks airplane crashing.
We have a code 4. Repeat, code 4. A plane down in the water.
This is Lucas. We're launching the jet ski.
The two lifeguards are the first rescuers to go looking for the plane.
We drove as fast as we could to the scene of the accident. There was a lot of things coming through my head. I was nervous, scared. I was kind of full of adrenaline. We wanted to go in and try to rescue as many people as we could, but at the same time, we've never trained for a situation like this. As soon as we turned government cut, those jetty rocks, we noticed that it was very calm, very quiet. It wasn't like the ocean side where it was very rough. There was no waves. It was very, kind of very eerie.
At first, Lucas Bocanegra finds no sign of Flight 101 or any of the passengers.
Little by little, we started seeing debris float up onto the surface of the water. And we saw some chairs, some luggage here and there, and suddenly we noticed it was a body in the water. As soon as we put the body on our jet ski, we realized that from his injuries that there was nothing we could do. From there, it was just try to recover as many bodies, bring them back for their families.
News crews swarmed the beach.
Chalks Flight 101 plummeted into the channel in full view of tourists lining Miami Beach.
Even a fraction of a second, the whole plane was engulfed in flames.
Black smoke and then an explosion. Pure fire in the sky.
It was so surreal, we couldn't believe that we actually witnessed that.
Chopper 4 over the wreckage as Miami Beach Coast Guard look for any survivors.
But the effort is futile.
We retrieved some of the bodies, but we were unable to find anyone that had survived.
All 20 people on board are dead, including pilots Paul DeSanctis and Michelle Marks. The residents of Bimini are devastated by the horrific news.
I was very sad for the crew and the friends that I had lost on the airplane. You never expect an accident to actually happen. And to see that on television like I did, it was very, very sad.
In Washington, senior NTSB investigator Bill English is put on the case.
I was just in my office doing some routine paperwork for something else, and the director stuck his head around the corner and said, "Oh, there's been an accident." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he mentioned a Grumman mallard. So I immediately knew it had to be Chalks.
Within hours, investigators are at the crash site, where 19 bodies have been recovered. One is still missing.
I was very familiar with Chalks Airways. I'm a seaplane-rated pilot myself, and there is the reputation, the legend of Chalks Airways, the oldest continuously operating airline.
Chalks has a long and rich history. The airline was founded in 1917. During the Prohibition era, passenger lists included notorious rum runners and later Hollywood movie stars. Chalks planes even patrolled for German U-boats during World War II.
The novelty of flying at Chalks, it was just all that history, all the people that have gone, and it was really a great place to work for that.
The Grumman Mallard flying boat that crashed was built in 1947. Chalks Ocean Airways is the only airline that uses mallards to transport passengers.
They're not really a mainstream type of airplane, and so there's always that nostalgia about them.
Salvage crews find the plane's black box. Investigators send it to the NTSB in Washington. The box promises to reveal critical information about what the pilots were doing in the seconds leading up to the tragic mid-air disaster.
In any investigation, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder are a great desire. More data, the better. We can always learn something.
But Bill English knows he isn't going to get all the data he wants.
Okay, thanks.
The only recorder on board the Mallard was a cockpit voice recorder, or CVR.
Most airline aircraft have two flight recorders. The flight data recorder, depending on the aircraft, will record all sorts of parameters of the flight: altitude, airspeed, control positions, and so on. The Chalk's airplane was not equipped with a flight data recorder. It did have a cockpit voice recorder.
Though the lack of flight data is a big disappointment, media coverage of the crash gives investigators a very rare piece of evidence.
Authorities revealed that the final seconds of Flight 101 were captured on amateur video. The dramatic footage was shot by a tourist on South Beach.
Let's get a copy of that video. Okay, let's see it.
The video only captured the final seconds of the plane crash, but it confirms eyewitness reports that a wing ripped off in midair.
Can you enhance that for me?
The video showed the wing just after separation from the aircraft, the main part of the aircraft fuselage rolling off in the other direction, and the fire and smoke starting from that.
It was quite startling that the wing would fall off in this plane. It was a beautiful day. The water wasn't rough on the takeoff, and all of a sudden this wing just dropped off. It must have been absolutely devastating.
However, the video can't reveal why the wing came off. Answers to that question may lie at the crash site, where salvage crews are finishing their recovery of the wreckage of Flight 101. The right wing is found separate from the plane, but largely intact.
Wings falling off aircraft, modern day situations, is a very rare, extreme event, and there's only been a few cases of them in the past 20 or 30 years.
In Washington, another type of examination is already underway. At the NTSB lab, technicians are busy analyzing the Mallard's cockpit voice recorder tape.
The cockpit voice recorder, CVR, which does what it sounds like, records the pilots' voices talking to each other or on the microphones.
But the tape is a jumble of voices and sounds. Technicians can't retrieve any useful information.
It turned out that the erase head function, it's just like a tape recorder that most people are familiar with. It didn't erase the old stuff, so every subsequent flight kept getting recorded over and over and over again and just became a muddled sound, and it wasn't audible to us or useful.
It's another setback.
Okay, let's revisit this again because we're running out of options here.
Investigators have fewer and fewer tools to work with. Bill English considers the possibility that Flight 101 hit turbulence so violent that it tore the plane apart. But the weather on the day of the crash doesn't support that theory. There were no storms that could have caused such severe turbulence. Clearly, something else had torn this plane apart. There's a possibility the Mallard collided with something in the water before takeoff.
Seaplanes don't take off of a conventional runway. They're in water where there can be things like logs or other debris, which could potentially cause structural issues with an aircraft.
But before they can reach a conclusion on that theory, investigators consider some other intriguing evidence. It's an urgent advisory issued by the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA. It warns that due to a faulty part, the propellers on the Mallard could come off during flight.
You're kidding me.
Something such as a blade separation, losing part of the propeller, could cause a great structural load on the aircraft.
English now has a solid lead, but his team is still missing the evidence they need to prove their case.
The entire island is devastated by the loss of life as investigators searching for answers wait for more wreckage to be pulled from the sea.
In the aftermath of the crash, Chalk's Ocean Airways grounds its remaining fleet of 4 Grumman Mallards. At the NTSB's Miami command post, they're working to identify various plane fragments and other debris from the crash.
We started out with the wing itself that separated the spar, which is the main part of the structure of the wing, and any of the other fracture surfaces, looking for obvious initiation factors.
They carefully examine the propellers, looking for evidence that might confirm suspicions raised by the FAA advisory. But it's another dead end.
We're able to determine all the blades were attached, and the bending that we saw was the expected pattern from proper operation when those blades hit the water.
Once again, they're back to square one.
Here's the damn propeller. This is what I want you to look at.
Investigators focus their attention on the fractured wing. They've noticed sooting on parts of it. It's evidence of a very rapid fire.
We want to find anything that could be the initiating factor for the wing separation. Could it have been a collision with an object? Could it have been a fire? Could it have actually been a criminal act?
The burn marks raise a sinister possibility. An explosion. A bomb. This now falls outside the NTSB's area of expertise and authority.
Let's notify the FBI.
The FBI helps us in many of our investigations, and we will utilize some of their experts to rule out terrorism or a criminal act.
If it was a bomb that brought down Flight 101, a likely target would have been one of the 18 passengers.
Thanks for coming in. We're going to need your help on this.
One name stands out on the passenger manifest: Sergio D'Angelicourt.
Welcome aboard. Miss your boarding passes.
Certainly.
There are rumors on the internet that the crash was an assassination plot and D'Angelicourt was the target. His family made a fortune in pre-Castro Cuba. They were so opposed to Fidel Castro's regime that they had allegedly supported clandestine attempts to overthrow his communist government.
This is your copy? All right, now there's something I want to show you. We can't tell if it's just soot or it's explosive residue.
A bomb will leave chemical traces and distinctive patterns in the torn metal. FBI technicians are specially trained to detect them. The samples from the wreckage will be tested at FBI labs in Quantico, Virginia. 4 days after the accident, salvage crews are still bringing in wing fragments found at the crash site.
So we need everything that looks like it come from the right wing. Can we get some light over here? Overstress.
Most of the damage they see is from overstress fractures, areas where the metal was literally ripped apart when the wing tore off.
Come here. That's the sink.
When metal is suddenly stressed to the point of breaking, the fracture leaves a very distinctive, rough edge. It's easy to distinguish it from fractures that have developed slowly over time.
Cut this from here to here and get it to Clinton, Washington.
As we started to examine the right wing, spar and other components on scene at the Coast Guard station or the seaplane base, this was a visual examination there. We didn't have the sophisticated lab tools that we have at headquarters.
They identify parts to be shipped to the lab in Washington, where they hope closer inspection will reveal exactly what went wrong with the wing.
Hey, Clint. Clint, we're sending you as much of the wing as we have your way. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I'm still waiting for that report.
The results from the FBI explosives test come in.
Is that... Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
A mid-air bombing assassination could explain everything. But there is no explosive residue on the wreckage.
Okay, so that rules that out.
Structural failure is now the chief suspect in the downing of Chalk's Flight 101.
Well, that's all that's left. That's tomorrow.
It was obvious the airplane had a catastrophic structural failure. So we needed to find out the cause, the initiating factor of that structural failure.
He needs to know more about the long history of this particular Grumman Mallard.
It's very typical in any accident investigation. We want to look at the maintenance history of an aircraft. For an aircraft that's 60 years old, that's even more so important.
It takes days to comb through the 28 boxes of old records.
We want to make sure that we can develop an entire history of this aircraft, what sort of chronic problems may have shown up in the maintenance of the aircraft, and what types of work had been done on any of the factors that looked likely to be involved.
Clint Cruikshanks is a structures investigator for the NTSB.
When we go into an investigation, we try to go in with a very open mind and look at the wreckage and let it tell the story for what happened. We wanted to look at every piece that broke on the right wing to determine if this was a age-related failure or if it was something that was caused by a structural overload.
As with most aircraft, the Mallard's wings are built from aluminium alloy. The spars run the length of each wing. In between the spars are stringers that give added support. Together, these parts make up the wing box, which also doubles as a fuel tank.
And then the skin is over top of all of that structure to kind of give a smooth aerodynamic look to the wing. All of these together work to carry the flight loads that the wing is designed to carry. Once you compromise one piece of that structure, the ability to carry the normal flight loads has been compromised. Thanks.
Over the years, the wing box had been repaired many times. Chalk's mechanics had patched up areas damaged by corrosion, which is not unusual for an aging aircraft, especially a seaplane.
The fact that they land on water means that their takeoff and landing loads are different than you would have on a land-based airplane. Also, they're always in water, and the corrosive effects of water are going to happen more readily on those airplanes.
But when investigators examine the rest of the Chalk's fleet, they find that the mallards are in far worse shape than they imagined.
Corrosion repairs. Corrosion. 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 Corrosion repairs. Lots of them.
The accident airplane and the other airplanes in Chalk's fleet were rife with maintenance issues. Corrosion was rampant on all the airplanes. There was evidence of shoddy maintenance practices on all of their other airplanes.
Many of the repairs exhibited extremely poor workmanship in quality, double, triple drilling of holes, excessive grinding of corrosion, scars on the material. And this involved the structural repairs that were made to the aircraft over the past few years.
Cruikshank's attention is drawn to a section of the lower right wing. There is a metal patch called a doubler on the surface of the wing's skin.
A doubler is simply a sheet of metal that goes over top of the skin, and it acts as a load transfer. It acts as a second piece of skin to patch the crack. It's kind of like the patch on a pair of jeans.
This is a big repair job. You sure we don't have anything on this?
It's an intriguing discovery. The patch is located exactly where the wing broke off from the rest of the plane. When he takes a closer look at this section of the wing, Cruikshanks notices the edges are smooth and shiny, totally unlike the rough edges he's been seeing on other debris.
We gotta see what's under this.
This crack is not from overstress. Instead, Cruikshanks suspects it developed over many years as the result of metal fatigue.
Metal fatigue is a process by which any piece of metal, a wing spar or anything, is repetitively loaded and unloaded. You can think of it as bending a paperclip back and forth, and everyone's done this, and after a while, it eventually breaks.
Metal fatigue in the wings is caused by the stress of flight over the lifetime of the aircraft.
In the case of this aircraft, every time it took off, the wing is loaded. That's lift that gets the airplane up into the air. Every time it lands, the wing is now unloaded, and there's no more stress on the wing structure anymore. That's just like bending that paperclip back and forth.
Cruikshanks is eager to find out what's underneath the metal patch.
Okay, let's see what this doubler's hiding.
They find even more metal fatigue. Deep cracks cut across the wing. The extent of the damage is staggering. A crack 40 centimeters long.
Man, oh man.
Investigating further, Cruikshanks makes another disturbing find.
3 machined holes in the skin forward of the leading edge. All 3 appear to be stop drill holes.
The holes indicate that Chalk's mechanics had been trying to stop the crack from spreading further. Years earlier, a mechanic had spotted the crack on the lower surface of the wing. He repaired it by drilling a hole in the path of the crack. It's called a stop drill hole.
The end of a crack, you can see even with the naked eye, is sharp. It comes to a point. That tends to want to develop a crack more. By drilling a hole at the end of the crack, that would spread out the stress, and the idea is to stop the growth of the crack there.
But the stop drill holes didn't work.
An attempt was made to repair that skin on 3 different occasions by stop drilling.
Even as mechanics put in more holes, the crack kept growing.
After the third stop drill, an attempt was made to further repair the wing by attaching doublers on the interior and exterior surface of the skin.
But the doublers didn't work either. The crack on the plane's skin continued to grow. Investigators now know the right wing was damaged long before the day of the accident. What they don't understand is why the crack could not be stopped.
Approved.
But a glimmer of an answer comes when they learn the plane was sending out warning signs of a deeper, more serious problem.
The Chalk's airplane involved in the accident were showing evidence of chronic fuel leaks for a long period of time, for many years.
According to the log, fuel leaks from the right wing were repaired again and again, but they kept happening.
The crews started to notice repeated fuel leaks during standard operations, and we tried to bring it up to the attention of management just for our concerns.
Just 2 days before the crash, it happened again. While doing routine maintenance on the Mallard, a mechanic came across fuel dripping from the right wing.
They always addressed the problem with trying to reseal the fuel tanks or trying to fix whatever problem they thought they had. It always seemed to be a reoccurring issue.
The procedure for plugging a leak was to apply a chemical sealant to the inside of the empty fuel tank. The sealant would take a day to dry. Then the plane could be refueled and returned to service. The leaks should have been a clue that the crack in the wing skin was just the tip of the iceberg. That there was a much more dangerous problem with the wing's interior structure.
Fuel leaks in this particular aircraft are indicative of a problem with the wing structure. In fact, Grumman put out a service bulletin back in 1963 that warned mechanics chronic fuel leaks are an indicator of a structural issue with the aircraft.
Okay, let's see what we got here.
Crookshanks examines the pieces that make up the right fuel tank.
Some kind of sealant.
He wonders why the fuel leaks persisted in spite of the constant efforts to repair them.
Hand me that scraper, please. Thank you.
Beneath the layers of sealant, he finds his answer.
Bingo.
Cracks in a critical support beam called a Z-stringer. It's the piece that the plane's skin was directly attached to.
All right, will you finish cleaning this off and then get some pictures, okay? Thank you.
Crookshanks finds evidence that Chalk's mechanics had tried to repair the stringer.
It appears that they did some grinding on the Z-stringer to remove a fatigue crack. However, they never went back in and re-inspected that area.
Instead, they only applied chemical sealant to the area to make it leak-proof, and in the process concealed the damage.
Chalk's made repeated attempts to repair the airplane by stop drilling the wing skin cracks, adding doublers over top of the cracks, but they never addressed the root of the problem, which is the cracked Z-stringer. The reason they couldn't address the Z-stringer is it was covered in fuel tank sealant.
The broken Z-stringer weakened the entire wing. Now, with every takeoff and landing, the plane's skin was absorbing the forces. Over time, the skin began to crack as well. The final outcome was inevitable.
The fatigue cracking reached critical length and the wing separated from the airplane.
Investigators conclude that a hidden crack in a key component of the right wing led to the devastating crash of Flight 101. Chalk's failure to identify such a serious problem now forces investigators to re-examine the airline's long history. Chalk's Ocean Airways had an image as one of the safest airlines in the world. Despite the age of their fleet, the airline had an outstanding record of safety dating back almost 90 years.
Chalk's safety record was great. They had never lost a passenger in all the years of operation.
Chalk was an old, established company, but it seems to me that somewhere along the line, the management and the quality of the work done had slipped quite a bit from in the past years.
What have you got on the financial state of this company?
Investigators are beginning to suspect that the company's reputation for safety may have been undermined in recent years by money problems.
Financial issues in an airline, especially a small carrier like this, can manifest themselves in many ways. Personnel are sometimes one of the first things to go.
A search of Chalk's financial history uncovers some trouble. In the 1980s, Chalk's went through a string of owners before going bankrupt in 1999. The airline was revived by a Miami businessman, but it kept losing money. Just a few months before the crash, the last attempt to sell the business fell through.
Not doing so well.
It wasn't a secret that we were having financial difficulty. The pilots had taken pay cuts and the captains had taken concessions, and we downsized a lot as far as personnel.
It wasn't just personnel that felt the pinch.
It was difficult for Chalk's to find spare parts and to do some of their repairs. Chalk's had a number of other unflyable aircraft that they owned that they would cannibalize for spare parts.
There were maybe only 50 or 55 aircraft ever built. In that case, the original manufacturer, Grumman, was no longer in production of that aircraft. They no longer supplied parts.
The airline's deteriorating health and the shortage of spare parts had a direct impact on safety.
There's so much regulation and there's so much just necessity to make the airplane fly. It's hard to skimp on maintenance and not impact reliability. And if you don't have reliability, then you're just spiraling downhill.
But no matter how tight the finances were, as a commercial airline, Chalk's should have been closely monitored by the Federal Aviation Administration. In fact, the FAA did assign an inspector to work closely with Chalk's.
The FAA inspector, which is called a principal maintenance inspector, was responsible for the oversight of the maintenance program as carried out by Chalk.
The inspector was aware the plane was suffering from chronic fuel leaks. And yet, inexplicably, he gave Chalk's a clean bill of health just 2 months before the crash.
What was this guy doing?
Investigators are at a loss to explain why the FAA inspector didn't pick up on warning signs the Chalk seaplane was giving off.
The fact that Chalk was an old established carrier, maybe they just accepted, well, there's only 2 or 3 planes, it's a small operation, they only fly during the nice weathers, and they're good old boys over there, they know what they're doing.
In effect, the FAA didn't step back and take a look at that forest for the trees and find out just what's going on in the maintenance program with these Chalk's aircraft.
The FAA may not have found fault with Chalk's, but it turns out that several people very close to the airline did.
But we did talk to this group of pilots who had left Chalk's prior to the accident, and every single one of them did have some story about maintenance aspects on their aircraft, whether it had to do with fuel leaks or other maintenance aspects. They all had some level of concern about the way Chalk's was taking care of these very old airplanes.
In fact, the pilots were so concerned that in the year leading up to the crash, Many of them met to discuss the problem of declining maintenance.
The captains of the company decided that it would be best for us to get together as a group, discuss the issues that we had to try to get our concerns addressed. One major issue that had happened, we had an elevator cable that had snapped in flight, and the crew luckily was able to get the airplane down using power and different settings and shifting people. But in most scenarios, that would have been an accident in itself. In aviation, there's error chains that they talk about, and you have to just, if you keep compiling one link after another, it's only a matter of time before an accident will occur. And from my point of view, I thought that if they kept going down the same road that they were going down, something could happen.
Eventually, Captain Weber decided he'd seen enough close calls.
My turning point and why I decided to leave Chalks was I just had seen too many things in the recent months, too many mechanical issues that were major issues in my mind, and I had 300 failures myself that year, and I had a wife at home that was pregnant. I had lost, I guess, my confidence in the company's ability or the airplane, and I just had had enough.
The NTSB's report on the crash of Flight 101 harshly criticizes the FAA for not detecting growing maintenance and financial problems at Chalks.
Had the maintenance program or the FAA stepped back and said, these aircraft need more than just a one-time fix. They need something much deeper than this, the accident probably would not have happened.
It also uncovers a loophole in the FAA's aging aircraft regulations, which require extra inspections for older planes. But those rules didn't apply to Mallards.
The Grumman Mallard was manufactured in 1947. It only carried 17 passengers, and it was not a transport category airplane. Therefore, it was exempt from these supplemental inspections. What we have here is the FAA has made an aging airplane safety rule, and they've exempted the oldest airplanes in the fleet.
The NTSB recommends that the FAA expand its oversight of aging planes.
When we determine the probable cause of an aircraft, the point is to do this so that similar accidents won't happen again in the future. I think we've used this accident to point towards the industry and the FAA to make sure that they take a look at the overall picture of what's going on at an air carrier.
Flight 101 spelled the end of Chalks Ocean Airways. A few months after the report was released, the airline shut down.
There was a lot of history and a lot of family community involved with the passengers as well as the people in the airline. So to see the whole airline and everything else kind of go down with the airplane is additionally, emotional for everybody that ever worked there or ever loved the airplanes.